Racist customer demanded we fire and replace our employees with white American employees, even though we are an immigrant-owned business. I mean, I've got to just say this off the bat. It doesn't matter if you're an immigrant-owned business or not. Demanding that you fire and replace employees with white American employees is crazy. Anyway, let's get into the story. Okay, I am a 28-year-old woman and I live here in Colorado. But my family and I emigrated here to the States from the former Yugoslavia, with my mother being Serbian and my dad being Montenegrin. My dad owns his own renovation business, which he was inspired to set up after watching the TV show Home Improvement. And even though I have my own full-time job, I do casual work for my dad's business, mainly doing office admin and payroll stuff. My dad has 2 employees, both of whom are Filipino. And one day, we had a customer who booked a job, and my dad sent his 2 employees to go to the customer's house, only for the customer to turn them away, telling them to leave. My dad's worker, who I will call Miguel, texted me to say that the client told them to leave. So I just assumed that they changed their mind and wanted to cancel the job. However, literally a few minutes after the text from Miguel, I received a call from the customer, who I will call Ken, who angrily complained about having 2 Chinese employees come over to his place, complained about them stealing jobs from white men, and actually demanded that we fire them, replace them with white employees, and send over an employee who is white and not an immigrant. I pretty much knew how this conversation was going to play out, but I decided to just roll with it and tell him that those 2 Asian men were our only employees and that our business is an immigrant-owned business, as my dad and I are both immigrants from Montenegro. Ken then demanded that we at least send over an employee who is white, and I told him it makes no difference if the employee is white or not, as the fact that my family and I are European makes us not really different to immigrants from the Philippines, China, Mexico, wherever. He then accused us of stealing jobs, saying things along the lines of, "This is Trump's America now, and that you don't deserve the business." And after letting him rant, I just told him to find someone else to do the job, and hung up. Well, there we go, guys. Some story to start this episode. Absolutely ridiculous. I just hope for your sake as a company that you guys had some form of non-refundable deposit in place, because you've had to send workers out there for nothing. So I hope at least you had some money or some compensation for their time. But let's just talk about the guy for a second. I just don't really understand like what he's even saying. Is he saying that because you employ immigrants, or the fact that you yourself are an immigrant, that you don't deserve the business that you've built for yourself, which obviously wouldn't exist without everything that you've done? How is this stealing jobs? I don't get it. Like, you've just done well yourself. It's not stealing jobs at all, is it? And even if it was, if you're doing the job better than some fat, lazy white guy, then power to you. Keep doing your stuff. You know what would genuinely be amazing to see in America, or just any country in the world, right? Well, the Western world, most likely. What would happen if all non-white people just said for a few days or a week, "I'm not going to work today, and let's just see what happens"? Like, genuinely. So every immigrant, or I guess non-American, let's say for this example, every immigrant, every non-white person just said, "You know what? I'm not working today." I think that the entire country would just like immediately implode, right? I mean, what would happen? Nothing would work. The whole country would just blow up. Genuinely, I mean, think about it. What, like, get in the comments down below. What do you think would happen? I think it would just be absolute anarchy, and probably be so funny to watch from someone in the UK. When my mailbox moving became political. So, when we bought the house and moved in 3 years ago, we accepted the location of the mailbox. It's on the other side of our driveway and across some uneven ground, about 50 yards away from the door. This wasn't a problem back then, but since that point, we've had a series of bad luck. My wife needed a new knee, I sprained an ankle, and while it's healed enough to walk on and go back to work, anyone who's had one knows that it can take a while before it's back to 100%. So, it was decided that the mailbox ought to be moved to the end of our path to the street. Straight ahead, on a flat and smooth surface, only about 30 feet away. We asked the post office what we needed to do to move a mailbox. We were told that all we needed to do was let the driver know that it was being moved and to just move it, making sure that it's numbered to match the house so there's no confusion. We went to the store to buy a new one since the old one was getting a little ratty from getting hit a couple of times, and I installed it this weekend. Which was, to our amusement, the best time to install it, since we actually caught the driver and were able to tell her that here was the new mailbox and that the other was going away. Great. Situation handled. Installation goes well, and now we're on to part 2, the removal of the other mailbox. Here's where my moving the mailbox got political. The old mailbox was on the same post as my neighbour across the street and one house over, so we shared it. During this past election, I posted no signs supporting either of the candidates. My neighbour John, not his real name, had half a dozen signs though. Flags and a banner as well in his yard in support of a certain candidate. John came over as I was removing the old box and complained that the only reason I was doing this was that I didn't support said candidate, and this was my petty ass reason, and that I just didn't want to be associated with him. In truth, I didn't want to be associated with him. Largely before we knew he was a supporter, he wasn't a very pleasant person. Walking my dog, he'd yell at me to keep that goddamn mutt off my yard, even though I was on my side of the street. He'd also call animal control on me about my chickens running loose across his yard, when in reality it was his neighbour to his right that had the chickens. I don't have any, although I did buy a used chicken coop since it's also a very nice unit for keeping my wife's Angora rabbits in. So I can see the confusion. We used to wave to him like we'd do for any of our neighbours we'd see outside, and he never waved back, typically just ignoring us and making a point to look at something, anything else other than us. Unless we had the dog, then he'd watch us like a hawk to make sure we didn't come near his lawn. Honestly, we disliked him long before we knew he was a supporter. I explained the medical condition, the walk through uneven ground that I stated above, but that wasn't enough for him. He threatened to call the HOA. We don't have an HOA, we have a neighbourhood association that only concerns itself with collecting donations for snow removal and mosquito spraying. I just finished removing the mailbox and went back inside, and I vowed to ignore him from here on out. Well, that is the end of the second story, and all I can think is, are we sure that these two people in the first story and the second story aren't the same? I mean, I think it might be right. This guy is, well, let's be honest, the guy in the first story was clearly a Trump supporter, as well as this guy as well. So, I mean, the top comment here says, your neighbour is mentally ill. I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, mentally there's a lot going on there, that is for sure. And once again, probably a racist. I mean, to be fair, that's a bit harsh. We don't have any evidence to suggest he's racist, but I would just love if John was the same person as in the first story. It would just make me laugh. Brother throws fit because he didn't get a job interview. So this happened a couple of years ago, but no matter what, I can't get over how entitled my brother acted. For context, my brother, who was at the time about 23 years old, and my older sister, who was 28, both applied to one of the only jobs hiring near where they lived. The job was for a cashier position, which my sister had several years of experience in customer service, while my brother only worked 1 year at a factory in his life and quit because he didn't get a raise, claiming it was unfair when staff who worked there for 5+ years got raises. But anyways, one day we were out shopping when my sister got a call from the job they both applied for. They wanted her in for an interview. When hearing that, my brother basically threw a fit. He told my sister it was unfair you got an interview and I didn't when I put in an application a week before you did, and I even called to check up on it. I reminded him that our sister has experience while he doesn't. He then repeated, but I put in an application first. I should be first. Then I told him that's not how interviews work. They wait for the ones with experience so they don't have to do much training. He then got even more upset and claimed that the store is sexist and she's only getting hired because she's a female, which honestly made me so irritated. He was acting like a child, and our dad tried backing him up, telling my sister to put in a good word for your brother. My sister told our dad there's no way she can do that because even if she gets hired, it would be wrong to immediately convince them to hire our brother. While this conversation was going on, my brother kept on going on about how the owner is male, so he must be sexist and only want females, since currently the only staff there are women. So in order to get in, he needed our sister to tell them to hire him too during her interview. I noticed my sister getting upset throughout all of this. At first, she was so excited to get the interview and was hoping that everyone would be happy for her. But instead, no, they acted like she was wrong for getting the interview instead of our brother. I told my dad and brother that that was enough, and that she got the interview because she has several years of experience under her belt, while our brother had none, and it had nothing to do with her gender, and that no, she wasn't going to mention our brother during her interview or after getting hired, because if they didn't contact him, clearly he didn't cut it, and just stop. After that, everyone went silent. I mean, this is absolutely crazy, because what your brother, OP, is asking your sister to do, and for some reason your dad is supporting him on this, is to potentially sacrifice her own job, her own career, if she does, get this job. By the way, she's only got an interview so far, for the sake of her brother. Like, imagine you went into a job interview and your sibling had said to you, yeah, during your interview, would you mind just letting them know that I have also applied for the job and I also want it? Firstly, are there even 2 jobs available, or are they just hiring one person? Because imagine you were competing for the same job and your brother was like, no, just tell them about me in your interview. I want to get it. And secondly, you're just completely scuppering your own chances if you just say, yeah, this is why I deserve the job. But also, have you seen my brother's CV? He could also be great. And also, even if you do get the job and you're in your first week or whatever, like your brother's asking, imagine you're in a new job and you say, this is great, guys. Really happy to be here. I really feel settled now, to the extent that I can now say, would you consider hiring my brother after just a few days of working at an institution? I mean, that would be downright ridiculous. Your brother is clearly very entitled. I think your dad is as well. Maybe that's where he gets it from. But yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if your brother hasn't got an interview, he's not qualified enough and he doesn't deserve one. And that's on him. Her face went red in anger. I thought I'd share a story from my time as a worker at a very popular theme park in Florida. I've mentioned in other stories I've shared that I worked at an attraction. One day, I was fast pass line greeter, and it was in the middle of peak season. We were ridiculously crowded, with wait times for standby being 2 hours, single rider around 50 minutes, and fast pass over an hour. We were instructed to allow people in on the time stamped on their fast pass to help thin the line. Sometimes when it wasn't as busy, we'd allow people to enter 5 minutes earlier than their ride reservation. A woman wearing white shorts, a fanny pack, and a white sun visor came walking up happily with her group and showed me her fast pass. I stopped her because it was 10 minutes early. I politely explained she'd have to wait to enter on the time stamps on the fast pass ticket. Oh, come on. Really? It's just a few minutes early, she said. I apologise, Mum. Unfortunately, we're very busy, so you're going to have to wait for the time on your fast pass. That's ridiculous. Everyone else let us in a few minutes early. She then tries to walk past me, but that's not happening. I blocked her by stepping in her way. I smile and I ask her to step to the side. Ugh, she says. I continue to let people in according to the times on their passes as the woman glares angry daggers at me. A man next to her tells her to just wait. It's not that serious, but she is fuming. Literally 3 minutes go by and she storms back up and shoves the pass in my face. Good enough now. Can I go in now? At this point, I'm trying to remain magical. Mom, you still have 7 minutes until you can enter. Please step to the side. You're joking. 7 minutes? You're not seriously going to make me wait for 7 minutes? Yes, I am. Please step to the side. Another 2 minutes go by as a line of people come in. I check everyone's time, not looking at faces so much, but hands and tickets when I see the same ticket. I look up and it's the same woman again. She still had 5 minutes to wait. Now I'm irritated and she's irritated. I just stare at her for a few seconds quietly before doing a 2-finger point back to the side where her group and others were waiting patiently. She stormed back off as my co-worker Kate walked up with my brake slip. The woman instantly got a grin on her face when she saw I was about to leave. Her grin, though, annoyed me so much, and my petty box was immediately switched to on. So I gave Kate a brief version of events, and I instructed her to make sure she waited until the exact time printed on the frickin' FastPass ticket. She laughed a bit and said, okay. I walk away, but only a few feet, when she sauntered over, arrogantly grinning to Kate, and shows her the ticket. Sorry, But you're gonna have to wait until the time printed on the fast pass, Mom, Kate says. The woman, with her face turning incredibly red in anger, says, "Did she tell you to do that?" Well, I have to work with her. I'm just standing pettily a few feet away, saying nothing. I feel like I talk about customer service jobs quite a lot in my episodes, because a lot of the stories that we see, especially with entitled people, are like just terrible customers. I feel like Disneyland or Disney World or whatever it's called, wherever you are in the US or in France or whatever, must be one of the toughest jobs when you get like an entitled person like this. And as OP said, like you're trying to maintain the magic and make this place so beautiful and special for children. I remember when I went there, and this is in France. I've never been to Disneyland or Disney World in America, but Disneyland Paris, and you know, the people that work there must be amazing. I don't really remember any of them in particular, but I just felt like it was such a special environment and like otherworldly and just almost heavenly. And obviously that is down to the people working there as much as it is everything else, because imagine if the people working there weren't like in that sort of mindset or so positive or like dreamy, it just wouldn't work, right? So to have people like this Karen of a woman potentially like jeopardizing that and ruining that for kids like myself, because I don't know how you, OP, have kept your cool as well as this. Like, fair play to you for doing that. You know, imagine me as a kid. I'm in the queue behind this Karen, and I see her having a go at you, and then you're just like, I can't be bothered with this sort of person anymore, and you flip, or you lose your head a little bit. That would just ruin the entire experience for me as a kid. So fair play to you for maintaining your cool. The point being, I feel like this would be one of the worst sort of customer service roles there is at an extreme, because you have to stay so professional and so positive. Maybe that's the case in a lot of customer service roles, but I feel like at Disney World, that's like the epitome of you've got to stay in character. You've got to stay positive, because who knows who's watching, and yeah, it's an amazing experience for kids like myself. But fair play to you. Well done for doing your job. But yeah, I don't think I'd be able to manage with people like this. Revenge by my dad on the man who harassed his sister. I lost my dad 20 days ago. The hurt is fresh. Not sure of the legality, but since Dad is gone, I guess this story can't harm anyone anymore. That is how you know this is going to be nuclear, when you read a sentence like that. My dad was my hero in more than one way. He was a wonderful storyteller, and there are so many stories about him. Here is one that is my personal favourite. My dad is the youngest of 9 siblings. He had 6 brothers and 2 sisters. He loved his siblings, and as the youngest sibling, he was loved and pampered. One thing that me and him share is our short temper. As a young man, my dad was known to be volatile. When he was 19, his second older sis, let's call her Cami, was married to a military man. He was mostly posted on the border. We are Indians. This meant my auntie Cami was living with her in-laws, like many women in India still do. The problem was her older brother-in-law. Let's call him Alex for a-hole. Alex was a goon, an extortionist, an abuser, and yes, an R-worder. He was scary. He was known for being physically imposing at 6'8". He was well built and was unbeatable in fights. No woman was safe when he was around. After my aunt Cami got married to her husband, the nasty brother-in-law Alex set his sight on her. He began harassing her, forcing her to sleep with him. The family did nothing to protect her. This went on for weeks. She was tired of fighting and was totally shattered emotionally. One day, she found the courage to talk about it to one of her older nephews, who was 18 at the time. He went home to my dad and broke down about how Cami was suffering and how her honor and life is at risk. This enraged my dad, but he realized that he wouldn't be able to take down the monster that Alex is all by himself. He gathered his friends, his older nephews, and together they hatched a plan. Actually, they had no plan. The plan was just to beat the absolute heck out of Alex, to send him a message, but they wouldn't be able to do this when he was sober. So they waited for the evening when he was usually drunk. My dad and his friends drank as well, for liquid courage. They then waited for him in the dark roads of their village, which still had sketchy electricity. Then they pounced on him as soon as they had the chance. It was 6 young, drunk fools against this one mountain of a guy. While drunk, he was still able to fight well. Alex also had a bunch of minions who, unknown to my dad, were right behind him. It became a free-for-all. My dad drunk and in the frenzy of the fight, grabbed a piece of wood he found on the road and hit Alex with all his might, straight on the head. And then my dad and his friends ran off because someone had called for backup and these young lads weren't sober enough to come up with a plan or a sane idea. Dad somehow made it home, showered and slept. The next day he told his mum they got into a fight and stuff went down. As he was telling his mum what happened, Dad was informed by his brother that the cops were looking for him. Grandma told Dad to lay low for a bit. Unfortunately, Alex made it to the hospital and was able to give a statement. Dad was on the run for a bit, but later surrendered because, according to him, I was tired of eating terrible food. They, honest to God, surrendered to the cops and demanded a good meal. Wow. The case was dismissed and Alex did manage to live, but he didn't survive for long. The injury my dad gave him chased him to his grave in a few months. This story is something Dad always likes to tell. He has zero remorse for what happened to Alex, because in his words, not a single woman was harmed or abused in their village after this incident. I miss my dad. I'm sure he had many more stories like this, but I will never know them. Okay, there we go. A pretty serious story to start, but yeah, respect to your dad, I suppose. The one thing I'm not entirely sure about is even if this story did come out when your dad was still alive, I don't think there would be enough evidence to really like convict him that much later on. But I mean, it's probably a good thing that it didn't really come out anyway, and that, you know, it wasn't public information like it is now when he was still around. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a violent person. I've never been in a fight in my life. But when stuff like this happens, who am I to say that violence isn't the answer? Seriously. I mean, if people didn't get this sort of treatment done to them at points in their lives, I think like they might just carry on doing stuff like this. It gets to the point where if somebody is causing this much pain, and I mean physical pain, not just emotional pain, of course, like how are they ever going to learn? How are they going to stop doing it? Maybe they never will. Maybe the answer is just to put them in jail for life. But I don't think that's that realistic, whereas something like this, it just is. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? Is violence very rarely, but sometimes the answer? I honestly think it probably is. Being the worst boss ever does not pay off. In the year 2003, the company I was working for closed down, so I sought out new employment. I was a machinist by trade with a great reputation, so it took me less than a day to get a job. We will call the new place Spiral because of the specialized tools they made. Anyway, I started out as one of the operators. The place was owner operated, meaning the owner was there daily. He had a floor supervisor that was actually pretty nice. After I'd been there around a year, the owner and super had a falling out, and the super left. For whatever reason, the owner, we should call him Dan, told me that I was in charge. A little backstory on Dan. He was in his 60s and had started the company out of his garage. He ended up buying a huge chunk of land and turned it into an industrial park, all while in his 20s. By now, he was one of the richest guys in the state. He was also the biggest jerk I had ever met. He treated every employee like garbage, except for me and one other guy. If we dared to talk to each other during work hours, he would scream at us. My promotion kind of financially trapped me. Dan would have no problems talking to me though, and he was the braggy sort of rich guy, while paying us the bare minimum. During our talks, I learned that he cooked his books. You see, the industrial park was owned by an entity that he created, while Spiral was owned by another. He would always make sure that the park entity charged Spiral enough in rent that it looked like the company was barely staying afloat. He also bragged that he'd taken a bunch of industrial waste and buried it on his property at home because it cost so much less. He made my life hell over the next decade, always keeping my pay just high enough that I couldn't afford to leave, while treating me and my guys like trash. I ended up with a 95% turnover rate on employees. I'm not exaggerating. 95% turnover rate. So 19 out of 20 of your employees left. That's mental. We ended up having to go to temp agencies, and towards the end, even they refused to send me people. Wow. I had to do some careful wording, but my duties ended up swelling to the point where I convinced Dan to let me say I was the plant manager. This right here was huge. I have no degree from college, but I now had a title and the experience. I started to look for a job in earnest, and after 6 months, I found one for a lot more money, with benefits. Yeah, Spiral had none. Now, over my time at Spiral, I had seen everyone that gave them notice be told to leave on the spot, and the company that hired me insisted I give them the 2-week notice. So I said I would, but I didn't. At the end of my last day, I sat at my desk and sent an email to the head of OSHA and the state's EPA office, 2 men that I'd gotten to know well. I filled them in on all the violations that Dan had disclosed. I also sent an email to the state's attorney about the books. I left my keys on my desk with a paper under them that simply read, "I quit." I never found out if the state's attorney went anywhere, but the contact at OSHA let me know the company ended up with $150,000 in fines for some willful violations, and the guy from the EPA dug up half of Dan's property before he admitted to where he buried the waste. Last I knew, he ended up in jail. Now, interestingly enough, OP actually said at the top of this one that they originally shared it in petty revenge, but they were told they should post it in nuclear revenge instead. And yeah, this is not petty revenge at all. I think you got the wrong subreddit there. I mean, $150,000 in fines is not petty. That is pretty serious. Can't quite get over that turnover rate in employees though. I mean, 19 out of 20 roughly employees leave. You just know that it's probably not the best working environment when that is going on. Goodness me. Okay, now we're shifting things up and moving over to a different subreddit, so these stories probably aren't as nuclear, but don't worry. They are revenge stories, and that is the name of the subreddit nonetheless. I blackmailed the maintenance man at my grandma's senior centre. Hi, I am a 41-year-old woman. I had to do some community service for a misdemeanor charge I was found guilty of, so I went to the senior centre in my town. Immediately upon arriving and being introduced to the person in charge, aka the maintenance man, he was hitting on me. We did no work at all. We walked straight through the cafeteria and out the back door and sat on a bench where he proceeded to tell me how awful his life was, how he was in a loveless marriage, his wife was handicapped, on and on. I felt bad for him until he started talking about the other girls that came through. They sent him pics and he signed their paperwork to say they did their community service. Maybe I wanted to do the same? I don't remember what I said, but I left and didn't go back, pretending it didn't happen. Then I only had a week left in my sentence to have my community service done, and I didn't do any of it. I had 4 out of 40 completed, so I did the only thing I could think of. I texted the maintenance man and told him I wasn't going to send him nudes, but he was going to sign my paperwork, or I would tell his boss and the court what he was doing. So he signed it. Then I told my probation officer not to use them anymore and why. I wanted to call his boss, but never did. I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't taking advantage of the women in that program anymore. Just to clear things up, he is no longer part of the program because I did turn him in the same day I blackmailed him. I regret not doing it sooner, and I regret not telling his employer and his wife. Funny ending to this one is one day I was at work telling some girls about this guy, and later on that day, one of them pulled me aside and told me that the maintenance man is her stepdad. She started crying, saying she knew he was doing this to her mum, but her mum won't believe her, and maybe now she will. I felt terrible for her. I told her to have her mum call me and I would tell her all of it, but I never heard anything, and as far as I know, they're still together, and he still works there. Which sucks, because now I'm 50 and can go there, and it's awesome. The craft room is insane. They have a choir, lots of exercise equipment, free transportation, and day trips everywhere, but I don't want to see him. If I had the balls, I would totally go and make sure I said, "Hey, remember me?" Oh god, what a horrible person. I mean, just what a horrible person. I really wish that, like, you know, this isn't, as I said, this isn't from Nuclear Revenge. This is just from r/revenge stories. And this is one of those stories where I wish the revenge was nuclear. Like, the fact that that guy is still working there now is ridiculous. I feel like this is one of those where you need to find out and get in contact with other women that this has happened to. I don't know how you would, but maybe, you know, talk to some other staff at this location and sort of explain what's going on and what this guy has done to you and other women, and maybe they'll have the contact details of others that have worked there before. I mean, they should, right? They should have the community service details. Whatever. Like, you need to do something about this because this guy is just taking advantage of you. And I sort of get it. Like, if you're someone that has to do community service and this guy's, you know, exploiting you, sure, but like offering you a decent deal, you can do this and get off completely. don't know. I can't like really blame any of these girls for doing this. It's just so like, yeah, as I said, exploitative and manipulative and just disgusting. Just very, very gross. This is what I say, like, sometimes is violence the answer? I don't know. This guy's got away with it completely, in my opinion. Yeah, there was a little bit of revenge, but barely any. I mean, look, fair play to you for actually getting him to stop and not take advantage of women, but is that revenge? Getting someone to stop what they were doing? Not really. Like, where's the revenge there? They just stopped. It's a shame. I wanted more there. Now for our final revenge story of this one. A lousy friend. This is about my ex-friend Ivy. We grew up together, did everything side by side, and had each other's backs always. About 5 years ago, I really needed her the most, as I was in a really rough period. I lost my job, and not long after, my boyfriend broke up with me. I needed a place to stay for a while as I figured things out. Ivy, who more times than I can count I'd given a place to stay when she was struggling, and when she was going through breakups, couldn't help me. This one time I needed her. She just said, "Look, I wish I could help, but things are tight." All I needed was a place to stay. I'd pay for everything else I was going to need or use. I managed it somehow with the help of another friend. I found another job, and I was doing okay again. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and I was doing better than ever. Great job, my own place, a solid life. Then, out of nowhere, and after years of no communication, Ivy showed up at my door. Guess what? She needed a place to stay for a few weeks, since she was down on her luck. I just looked at her, thought about all the times I'd been there for her, and all the times she wasn't there for me. Then I smiled and said exactly what she said to me. I wish I could help, but things are tight. It wasn't something huge, but it felt great. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just letting people feel the loneliness and absence they once left you with. And there we go. That probably is the moral of the story right there. Look, we started with some nuclear revenge in today's episode, ended with some more minor stuff. But yeah, I agree. This is just karma personified. And I think that you're right. It doesn't have to be loud. Revenge doesn't have to be grandiose, crazy, even nuclear. Sometimes it's better to just send a message with something like this. In this case, it's a literal message just saying, you know what? No, you did this to me. I'm doing this to you. How do you like it? But other times I do feel like, yeah, maybe it's better to go a little bit more overboard just for the fun of it. This time it wasn't one of those occasions. And I think what you did was perfect. It would have been nice, I think, as well to just, and maybe she did infer this from what you said or the tone of what you said, but you know, you're doing well and you have your own place and you probably, well, definitely could have taken her in once again. I mean, if you took her in before when things were worse for you, you can definitely take her in now. I hope she knows that. I hope she knows that things aren't tight for you, that you're doing well and that you were saying that sarcastically. Because yeah, that's when it would hit the hardest if you're like, oh God, this is because I said what I said and didn't take her in. I should have done that. Little bit too late though. Am I the jerk for divorcing my husband and leaving him with the kid after finding out I'm not biologically the mum? The original post for this one came on August the 5th, 2024. I can't believe my life has come to this. All I ever do is go out of my way to help others. But on the few occasions I need help, nobody ever comes through for me. I am a 36-year-old woman, and I've been with my husband, who is 35, for almost 10 years. We've been married for 7. We had what I thought was my child by surrogate over 2 years ago, because after 4 years of trying to conceive with no success, despite medical intervention, it turns out I am unable to carry a child to term. I'd always wanted to be a mum. Devastated is an understatement regarding how I felt when I found out I have a medical condition that would make it nearly impossible to carry a baby to term. It was even more upsetting when I had to get a major surgery to remove uterine growths with the hope to increase fertility, and complications during surgery warranted a partial hysterectomy involving removal of my uterus. I still had my ovaries, so we started looking into the cost of a surrogate. It's really expensive. My close friend since college, who'd already had 2 kids of her own, offered to serve as the surrogate for us to cut down on costs. After 2 disappointing IVF sessions that didn't result in pregnancy, she became pregnant on the 3rd try and carried a boy to term for us. I was so happy and busy after the birth between being a mum and returning to work after a 4-week paternal leave, so I didn't notice any warning signs. I should have noticed the red flags and warning signs early on, but I didn't. I was just so exhausted from working so much at my stressful job, and on top of that, 2 part-time jobs to cover most of the bills, and the anticipated medical and legal costs associated with this friend becoming our surrogate. I was the primary breadwinner. Now, my friend and my husband started talking more. I'd actually sometimes come home from my weekend job to find her already hanging out at our house when my husband was there. I chalked it up as innocuous. It's good for her to know my husband better, since she was in the process of hopefully carrying our child for us. I was grateful to have someone helping us have a child. I also then thought it weird that our son has brown eyes when both of us have blue. Then I found out that while this is uncommon, it is possible sometimes due to many genes controlling eye color. Recently, it all came to a head when I took our son to a doctor's appointment and they did metabolic panel and blood tests, which showed that he had a blood type that is not biologically possible to have with me as his mother. He's B+, I'm A+, my husband is O+. Immediately, I started worrying it was the fertility clinic's fault and that they'd messed up and implanted a wrong embryo. I started lining up lawyer consultations to possibly sue the clinic, and I looked into having a DNA parentage test done. The test results showed that I'm not the mother, but my husband still is the father. I was heartbroken and angrier than ever. I talked to lawyers about medical malpractice in the fertility clinic we'd used. Then my husband confessed that he'd slept with my friend, our surrogate, on a few different occasions during our struggle to have her get pregnant with our embryos. This means what I thought was our son conceived by IVF and carried with a surrogate isn't my son at all, and he was in fact conceived the old-fashioned way, which I can't even do. Livid and absolutely broken at the same time doesn't even begin to describe how I feel. I've been breaking down into crying spells over and over again about this. He claims he didn't ever think pregnancy could result because he pulled out, and he'd always assumed that he was the reason for our earlier struggles to conceive, both before my hysterectomy and during the IVF insemination process with this friend. I felt an immediate triple betrayal from what was supposed to be my husband, my friend, and now knowing my child isn't even really mine. I had such white-hot rage and delirium, I immediately left home and stayed at a hotel for almost a week before asking my parents to let me stay at home for a while. I admit, I left our son with him. I'm now filing divorce because he cheated and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I've also cut off my friendship with my friend, the surrogate, and I feel afraid to trust anyone else now. I've seen a divorce lawyer to see about giving up my legal rights to this kid, so I don't have to face such betrayal or owe child support. My husband and friend, surrogate, admit they were wrong and keep apologizing, but also called me immature and heartless to just give up on my son like that. My parents also say I can't just give up on a kid that I went through so many legal and medical hoops to have. When I told them I refused to stay in a cheating marriage and I'd rather adopt someday with a better, more trustworthy partner, they also told me that I was wrong and that maintaining my parental rights isn't much different than if I adopted outright. They said it isn't blood that makes a family. They're all about me divorcing my cheater husband, but they keep telling me I'm making a mistake giving up my parental rights. Some of my other friends agree with what I'm doing. A few admitted they weren't big enough to swallow pride and care for an affair baby, or to see daily reminders of my friend/surrogate's betrayal every time I look at her son. I just want a clean break and a fresh start. I'm also looking at relocating several states away. So, am I the jerk for giving up my parental rights in the divorce because a kid I paid a lot of money to have born by surrogacy isn't biologically mine at all, but is actually the surrogate's? Okay, wow, what a story. First of all, let's jump into some comments before I give my thoughts and we get into the update for this one. Somebody said, "No, you are of course not the jerk. You've suffered a terrible betrayal. Only you can say what's best for you." Personally, I wouldn't be able to look at the child without being hit with the betrayal again and again. Your parents and friends don't have to actually deal with that situation, so they don't get a vote. Your soon-to-be ex is a real piece of work. You're immature? I'd want to throw up if I was in the same room with him. Please get some therapy to work through this. Don't let these two jerks hold you back from living your best life. Completely agree with all of that, by the way. The immature comment is just ridiculous. Like, when you know you're in the complete wrong and then you have a go at the person that you've done this to by calling them immature, it's insane. Anyway, OP replied to this saying, He feels like biological maternity shouldn't matter that much when it means that I am finally fulfilling my dream of becoming a mother. He says that if I adopt someday, I'm still going to have to raise a child that isn't biologically mine. How does that make any sense? There's a difference. On the one hand, when you adopt a child, you know it's not yours. But when you have a child through a surrogacy, like, you don't also think it's not yours. It's your genes. It's completely different. I know it's not in your belly, but come on, man. Anyway, let's carry on. OP says, he has reminded me about what a depressive wreck I was during the infertility, the aftermath of my partial hysterectomy, and how I put him through the ringer because I was obsessed with wanting to have a child. He claims that I pushed him away with my baby obsession and he couldn't deal with me anymore, and that's why he started straying the way he did. He also says that I can't just turn my back on a child when I legally signed all the paperwork, which is similar to adoption paperwork, since the state doesn't readily recognize a child born to a surrogate to be the couple's child, since they base it on the person who gave birth to the child as being the legal mother until paperwork is signed that transfers the rights over. He also claimed that I'm going to have a difficult battle ahead of me trying to reverse that. What a nice person your soon-to-be ex is. Jesus. Now, somebody said that OP should ask her husband and the surrogate to actually reimburse her for the cost of IVF. OP replied to this saying, I tried and failed. The doctor and clinic I complained to said the IVF costs were associated with the formation and storage of embryos and the procedures associated with the insemination, not the outcome. OP then also responded to a question about her ovaries or eggs being intact or not. She said, obviously I have eggs if my ovaries are intact, and they extracted eggs to form the embryos prior to inseminating. There's still eggs remaining there. Well, I suppose that is good news. I don't know if OP will be able to go through this process again with another surrogate after this rubbish. I mean, think of the trauma, but who knows, at least the option is there. OP then explained fully in the comments the process of the fertility clinic being involved. The fertility clinic was just involved in the egg extraction, embryo formation, and storage of eggs and embryos. Another medical practice utilized the in vitro fertilization methods with the person I thought would be our surrogate. He didn't pick the surrogate for us. It was a personal friend who agreed to do this out of the supposed kindness of her heart, since she already had 2 prior children and knew that she could carry to term easily and didn't mind being pregnant. Had we gone through a professional surrogacy practice, there would have been other steps involved, and they would have found a few options for surrogates for us, but the costs were way too high, which is why we skipped some steps and a lot of money by going through a friend that we thought we could trust. Now, I feel like I can trust no one. I don't even feel like I could try surrogacy again in the future because my trust in that is broken. Well, there we go. I suppose that is the answer to my question, which is a real shame. Somebody else commented, you're obviously not the jerk. One of the things that gets me though is that you were working extra jobs to pay for the surrogacy, which I'm assuming included her medical bills and financially supporting her. I'd speak to a solicitor about suing her for your money back. She knew that if she was having sex, there was always a chance that the child was biologically hers. OP said most of the cost was for the egg retrieval, embryo formation and storage, and especially the IVF procedures, which weren't eligible for insurance cover through her health insurance. Yeah, I see. I mean, tough spot, but surely there is something you could do there. Something legal you could do there. Like, you can sue for something. Surely, like damages of any sort. There must be rights or, like things that you can't do as a surrogate mother. I mean, there has to be, otherwise it would just be ridiculous, right? And I know this wasn't a professional surrogacy, but surely you can't have sex during surrogacy or like supposed surrogacy with one of the people you're meant to be like doing the work or doing the job for. I don't know. I don't know any of the rules clearly, but if you do, I suppose they also differ wherever you are in the world, but let me know in the comments down below what the laws are where you are. OP actually then answered finally a couple of questions about the surrogate. Firstly, her family, saying she doesn't have a husband. She had 2 kids with a long-term boyfriend, but they split 5 years or so ago. She's not married. She was with her ex for a long time and had 2 kids with him, but they didn't marry, and then they broke up. Somebody asked, finally, did the surrogate sign legal papers regarding the parental rights? The only paperwork that was legally drafted was for her transferring over the parental rights to us. much like an adoption in the event that there is already a mutual off-the-books agreement to adopt from someone already personally known. We were trying to do it as cheaply as possible because we don't make much money, and the cost that couldn't be avoided was sky high, enough to the point I took out loans from the bank and then picked up those 2 part-time jobs on the side to pay towards these loans. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the original post and some comments. Now, as I said in the intro, there is an update to this one, which comes 5 months after the conclusion of that. However, I do just want to say one thing, and I feel like most things have been cleared up by the comments, and I do agree with the majority of what was said there. The one thing that I just don't think has been talked about enough is the level of betrayal. Like, it's actually insane from so many people. Well, I say so many people, it's only actually your husband and the surrogate in quotes. But like, it's actually crazy. I mean, the fact they've gaslit you as well is just the cherry on top. But that's the one thing the comments aren't really saying. It's just, yeah, you've suffered a lot of betrayal, but like, think about the actual trauma. This would have gone on for your entire life, right, if you hadn't found out. I don't think that you would have ever been told by your husband or by the surrogate what actually happened. So there is a decent chance that you could have gone your entire life with having a son that you obviously thought was your son that actually wasn't ever related to you. And I know we see these things sometimes on, like, we have Jeremy Kyle, well, not anymore, it was cancelled in the UK, but like Jerry Springer in the US. It just is insane, and I don't actually think that sometimes I realize how common stuff like this is, or actually how easily it can come about, because all that has happened here is just 2 people have well, one person has cheated, but all you need is for these 2 people to hold this truth for their lives, which, I don't know, they probably could easily do so. I mean, they did it for a while anyway, and then you find yourself living an entire life where you think you're a mum, but you're actually not. You know when you see on these shows like, oh, this woman finds out after 25 years that you are not the mother or you are not the father. I'm always a bit like, okay, that's just ridiculous. But this is not ridiculous. I can see how this would happen, 100%. Very tough. But as I said, let's get into the update that came 5 months later, which was actually left in the comments of the original post. It wasn't a separate update. So this was January the 4th, 2025. And OP said, I'm low on time right now. I'll be posting a separate update post later. Now, at the time of recording, that hasn't happened, which probably means that, yeah, very, very stressed. No time at all. But they still say, I'm not staying and I'm not caring for him anymore. I wasn't even offered a choice in the matter at all, which is why I've kept telling myself I shouldn't want to compare myself to men in a similar type of parentage situation, and I've kept myself aloof towards the boy I thought was mine. I've no legal rights anymore, no matter what, because she fought to get her son back. I'm actually a lot more upset about losing this child than I presented in my post, and I'm realizing more and more with each passing day, the choice wasn't mine and I lost. Oh my gosh, I see. I posted that I wouldn't want to be the sucker raising someone else's kid as more of a cope than anything. She got to have her kid. He left me and I'm stuck with nothing. What the heck? And that is all for the post. I didn't really fully grasp that when I started reading that, but wow. So the surrogate actually fought back. Well, not the surrogate, I suppose. The actual biological mum fought back and said, no, this is my kid. I am the mum and I'm going to be the mum. Jesus. Okay. OP did add a little bit more context in the comments, explaining about being the legal guardian in the question after the maternal test confirmed her not to be the biological mother. She said, and yes, that is exactly what I've been going through all these months. I have little to no rights. I'm stuck coping with major loss. I suppose the question was asking, like, what rights do you have as a legal guardian if you're actually not involved with the kid at all, like biologically, right? My best chance at still being this boy's guardian is to stay with that awful scrub of a guy, hope he lets me stay, and agreeing to let that slaw of a friend, I've never heard slaw before, but that is a wonderful word. I presume it's a combination of 2 derogatory words, but I might use that myself, have 50-50, and be the chump who still pays most of the bills for that unmotivated scrub SOB in the meantime, while he continues to cheat. It also came out that she wasn't his only affair either. He's been cheating all along for most of the time that we'd been trying, without success of getting pregnant. Oh my gosh. So for anyone who acts like I'm selfish or I make their blood boil, they can go F themselves. They don't know me like that, and I don't have any real choice in the matter. Holy heck is all I can say. Just insane. Just absolutely insane. Like, wow, what a story. I'm absolutely shocked at that outcome. I didn't actually talk at all in my comments after the first post about the main point of the update, as in how would you feel and how is OP dealing with the fact that, yeah, it's not her kid anymore, but like her parents were saying, do you have to be blood related for it to actually be your child? Like, you know, if you adopt a kid, then they're still your child, right? Does the biology of it really matter that much at all? OP said at first that it did matter. Suppose a few months later she realized that it doesn't matter, or at least doesn't matter as much. But, you know, after 2 years of raising a kid, to then just have them taken away like that, even though they're not yours, is clearly more impactful, I suppose, than OP expected. But Jesus, I mean, somehow the surrogate, in quotes once again, and your ex, or soon to be ex, I suppose, I guess he left you said in the update, are even worse than I first thought from reading the original post. Wow, that was a very short update, but one of the most impactful and just like destroying that I've read. I'm actually slightly lost for words. One of my boyfriends, who is 21, best friends, who is 22, family's house burned down in the California wildfire. His family is him, his pregnant wife, and his toddler, and they are now coming to live with us in our small apartment. I did not agree to this, and I, a 21-year-old woman, am feeling extremely anxious and panicked. This was originally posted on November the 11th, 2018. First, I just want to preface this by saying that I am fully willing to support their family through tangible means, like buying them food, supplies, furniture, etc. I just don't think our apartment is a viable option. My boyfriend and I live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in a very expensive area. Rent is around $3,000 per month, and we're both stressed out college students. This guy has been best friends with my boyfriend since high school, and they regularly keep in touch and drive to see each other. My boyfriend and I live in NorCal, while they live more south. The friend has not been in a good financial situation for the last 2 years. He dropped out of community college after he got a girl pregnant, and they ended up getting married after she gave birth. She's now 7 months pregnant with their second child. My boyfriend and I usually go down to visit them together, and we always pay for meals, and I always try to buy a couple of toys for their 2-year-old. We have been in contact with them since last night. They were able to safely evacuate and bring some essentials, including their car, but their house has burned down. My heart aches for their family, and I really want to help them by transferring money or even calling some of my friends who live in SoCal to see if they are willing to take them in. But during a FaceTime call this morning, my boyfriend immediately, without any hesitation or asking me, offered up our small apartment to them. They were very, very thankful, and at first said that it would be too much for us, but my boyfriend insisted, and they graciously accepted in the end. I was in the background, fairly silent the entire time. After my boyfriend hung up, I asked him why he just extended the offer without even asking me, and he acted shocked and said that he thought that I would 100% support his decision. I told him that I would have in any other living situation, but we're 2 poor college students living in a small apartment in an expensive area, and it's definitely going to be more than difficult to accommodate his friend, his pregnant wife, and toddler. My boyfriend said that I was being a bit selfish and that they just lost their house, and that I should be more understanding and sympathetic. Yeah, to be honest, I kind of agree with your boyfriend at this point in the story. I'm sure things are going to get a little bit more difficult as we go on though. OP continues, don't get me wrong, I agree that I'm being selfish, but I'm also being reasonable and trying to think rationally. I may be a bit biased since I'm in the middle of preparing for the MCAT, which I'm taking in January, and I really need to do well on it. And dear God, it is not an easy test. For those of you that may not know, I didn't know this myself, the MCAT is the medical college admission test. Okay. Wow, sounds tough. My boyfriend and I are both in very stressful majors that require a load of work and studying, and on top of that, he and I both work part-time. I feel like I'm already so stressed out right now with school, work, and everything. I look forward to quiet time in our apartment that we get to spend. I digress, but I can't help but think of how this changes everything. Of course, this is probably temporary, even though my boyfriend said they could stay as long as they need to, but right now is really not the time. My boyfriend and I argued over this for an hour, and I ended up just heading out for the day. My boyfriend is sticking to his plan, and he texted me saying that he's sorry and that he knows it will be hard, but to remember we're doing a good thing and supporting our friends in a time of crisis. I couldn't help but think that it was really his friend and not ours at all, but I might just be being bitter. They are planning to drive up tomorrow morning. I'm just so worried, stressed, and my anxiety is through the roof. I came home around 2 hours ago and noticed that my boyfriend has already set up a mattress in our second bedroom, which is our office/work area, and set up the couch. I burst into tears and I almost had a panic attack. I just don't know how to deal with toddlers, and I also don't know how to support and take care of a pregnant woman. My boyfriend comforted me, but I can't help but feel a bit resentful right now. He agreed to this without asking me, and I can't fight back now. I seem like such a horrible person. I'm still crying in our room as I'm typing this, and my boyfriend went out to stock up on groceries. God, I don't know what to do, and I feel so panicky. What can I do at this point, Reddit? I'm at a complete loss. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the original post. And I've got to say, when I first read the title and even like a few paragraphs here, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, yes, you're going through a lot, OP. And I understand that. And you've got your exams and you're struggling just in life generally. Well, not struggling, but you're under a lot of stress. But I mean, these people have had their house burned down, and there are levels to this. However, the more and more that I read, the more I'm thinking this probably just wasn't a good fit. And surely there's someone else out there that could take these people in that, has more space, has more time, has more resources. I mean, maybe there isn't, but you would think that there is. And if there isn't, then fair enough, and fair play to your boyfriend for doing this. But the way he's gone about it, not asking you at all, that can't be a good thing. Like, his generosity and his selflessness is unbelievable, and I wish I was as selfless as this guy seems to be. Fair play to him, but you could argue it's gone too far, and if it's going to massively impact your guys' lives in a terribly detrimental way, I'm not sure if it's necessarily worth it. And yeah, not consulting your girlfriend is pretty crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, having anyone move in with you, like if you're in a small apartment, whatever, is going to be tough and you're going to have to make sacrifices. But I say that with the context of the fact that their house has just burned down. But it does seem like in this circumstance, it's not worth it. I don't know. It's close. Let me know in the comments down below what you are thinking right now. Obviously, there is an update to come in this one. I'm just thinking, like, if it's causing you to have panic attacks in your room and just be crying and feel so much resent and, like, yeah, just hatred, I suppose, that's not worth it. Now, one thing that is really interesting that I have to include here, and OP included this in a comment down below in the original post, is this. To be very honest, I'm not the biggest fan of their family. From what I could tell from visiting them with my boyfriend, they do not have their stuff together. While we visited them around 3 months ago, the wife regularly went out and partied while pregnant, and their toddler is extremely badly behaved. While I was there last time, I had to help change the toddler's diaper while the wife was out partying, and my boyfriend and his friend were playing video games. Okay, so maybe that's the context we needed a little bit more of, like, on top of all the fact that you don't have the resources to deal with them, you also just don't like them. And yeah, it's hard to sort of welcome someone into your home despite the circumstances when you've seen this, I suppose. But I'm not sure, like, socially and sort of like ethically, morally, where do you guys stand on this one? Should you let someone into your home when they've gone through such hardship and their home is burned down? Or if it's going to have such a negative impact on you, then is it worth it? I don't know, it's a tough one. Let's jump into some comments and see what the people of Reddit are saying. So first of all, somebody said, A, does he know the significance of the MCAT? Your feelings are so valid, OP. I can't even imagine being put in this position. My boyfriend just took the MCAT and he wouldn't see me sometimes for long periods of time because he needed to stay in the zone. B, there should be no obligation on you to help out whatsoever. This needs to be temporary. For the good of your future, your relationship, and your mental health, this kind of decision was not his to make on his own. You both live there. Now, I agree with like the majority of that statement, that paragraph. I don't agree with there should be no obligation on you to help out whatsoever. Because if everyone thought that and everyone acted like that, then these people would be homeless. Like, somebody has to step up here. And I know like no one's going to want to, and maybe they don't have any family that can help, but somebody is going to have to be selfless and do it. Like, I don't think it's fair to say that there's no obligation on you to help out. I mean, yes, there isn't, but someone has to. C, is this even allowed per your lease? I'm in MA, but my lease has a clause prohibiting visitors for over 1 week, I believe. Maybe you can use this to your advantage in a subtle way to hopefully avoid another argument. Again, I'm not sure if I agree with that, like their home is burned down. I'm saying this all with looking at like the generosity of people in the most recent fires that just obviously were completely devastating. People lost their lives and their livelihoods and were being welcomed in at times by strangers and given stuff by strangers, and yeah, like living with people that maybe they didn't know too well, friends 100%, that were having to sort of like change their lives to welcome in people that had had their lives completely destroyed. Like, you do have to make sacrifices at times like this. And if this happened to one of my good friends, I would like to think that I would make those sacrifices as well. I don't think it's as easy as saying, oh, well, I'm doing an exam and we don't have the space or the money for you. Like, you I don't know. You got to sacrifice these things when someone's house is burned down. D, if they stay longer than a week, you should consider putting yourself first and moving out. The MCAT needs devotion and routine. And if you value med school acceptances more than or equal to your current relationship, go for it. This is important stuff. And E, spend as little time at your place as possible. Find small ways to help out that don't take a lot of time or energy to avoid arguments and help keep the peace. Do those small things and then leave your place for the day. Move some stuff to a friend's place so you have a backup plan if you've had a super stressful day and just need a quiet place to crash. Yeah, that's all pretty good advice, to be fair. It makes sense. It really does. And I'm in two minds. I get it. Like, from a personal point of view, OP is like, what on earth is going on? I cannot deal with this. And I know a lot of you in the comments are probably saying that as well. I just think someone's home has burned down. You're going to have to make sacrifices for them. OP replied to this saying, he knows the significance of the MCAT, yet he still chose to make this rash decision without so much as to even consult me about it. Yeah, I looked up our lease this morning and it says no visitors for over 1 week too. I think that's usually the norm. I would definitely be pulling that card as leverage. Thanks a lot for the advice. I really hope that this will be temporary. Now, the one thing I have to say is that your boyfriend not consulting you is disgraceful. It's the worst part of this entire story so far. I cannot argue with that one bit. Now, this is important, and this is kind of what I've been saying, I suppose, the whole time. Somebody said, do they have any other options? Honestly, my boyfriend would do the same thing, and I love that about him. It really, really sucks that this is during such an important time in school, but if these people have nowhere to live, I don't see how turning them away isn't a little heartless. Of course, you might need to stay at your friend's house to get studying done, but is that such a horrible trade-off for helping a family with no home? That right there, right now, and by the way, there's more context and of course an update to come, is how I personally think. What do you guys think in the comments? This is a contentious one, and I think, you know, it's there's no right or wrong answer here, but yeah, that is slightly the way I'm leaning right now, as you can probably tell. OP replied to this, saying, I think they do have options, but decided to turn to us because their family would be harder on them, push them to pay for themselves, get out soon. They both have family nearby. Ooh. In fact, the husband's rich family lives not far from us. However, they have already housed their family for a year and a half after she got pregnant at 18. And according to my boyfriend, they were annoyed at how they acted during that time and almost kicked them out. They finally caved and actually bought the house that they lived in so they could get out. I just can't deal with irresponsible adults in addition to a toddler in my small apartment. As others have pointed out, they can get support from the FEMA or even stay at a local shelter. Hundreds of people are doing this. If they need money or food, I'll gladly send it to them, but I can't offer up my space due to many reasons. I'm sorry if you see this as heartless, but I get the feeling that you would feel differently if you were actually put into my situation. That is super valid, and I do completely agree with that. If I was in that spot, it would be different, and it's impossible to say how I'd act or feel if I was actually physically in OP's shoes. So, it's tough, but I'm also thinking, like, yeah, they can get support. Yeah, they can go and stay at a shelter, but you don't want to do, like, it's so much nicer to stay at a friend's house when you've already gone through so much, right? I don't know. Anyway, let's get into the update. This was posted just the next day. I never thought I'd be updating so fast, but everything was resolved in one of the most hectic and stressful nights of my life. Shout out to all of my supporters out there. You guys made my day yesterday. And to those of you calling me heartless because I don't think offering our living space up is a good idea, when I've said that I'm willing to support them in any other way, F you. And by the way, guys, I'm not calling her heartless at all. Like, I completely get it. I was just saying, I think sometimes you got to make sacrifices for other people, and they can be very brutal, but so is your home burning down. Anyway, the pregnant wife, husband, and toddler arrived at our apartment last night around 9:30 p.m. They'd already told us on the way that their toddler contracted some kind of food poisoning and wasn't feeling well, which is what delayed them. Me and my boyfriend go down to greet them, and we realize they have so much luggage. There were 2 large suitcases, a duffel bag, and like 4 Trader Joe's shopping bags filled with random stuff and half-eaten food. Okay, cool. That's going to be fun, lugging up the stairs. I hate that from OP. What are you talking about? Obviously they have stuff. Like, their home's burned down. What are you expecting them to have? Just like only the clothes that they're in? Obviously they're going to have like some form of suitcase that you're going to have to carry upstairs. Like, that tone is, I don't agree with that. Anyway, let's carry on. So my boyfriend and the husband starts to bring their stuff up, while I stay back and half carry the pregnant wife up the stairs because she feels too tired and nauseous. We get upstairs and I ask where Jake, the toddler, is, and the wife realizes she forgot to unbuckle him from the car seat and left him in there. She asked if I could go down and grab him. I wanted to say, not my forgotten toddler, not my responsibility, but alas, I decided to try to be gracious, at least for the first day. So I went down and unstrapped the toddler, who looked visibly sick. Again, like, I know these people might not be the best people or the best parents based on your experience before, but their home has just burned down and she is pregnant. She needs help. There were literally 2 bags of vomit, OP continues, next to him, which I removed from the car and threw in the trash because it would have been forgotten and become a severe health hazard. I tried to see if he can walk, and he started crying and started dragging himself on the ground, so I picked him up and carried him up the stairs. I set the kid down next to our couch, and Lord Almighty, this kid did not look good. His cheeks were flushed really red. There was dried vomit caked on his face, and his breathing seemed quick. I feel his forehead, and it feels really hot to the touch, so I run to the bathroom to get a thermometer. While I'm digging for the thermometer, I hear, "Again? Are you freaking kidding me, Jake?" So I rush out, and indeed, frickin' heck, the tot has thrown up all over our carpet. I wanted to cry. I run to the kitchen to grab paper towels, but the pregnant wife was already using some sort of napkin or cloth to sop it up, but she was smearing it and making it worse, and I wanted to die. I came to help her, and the tot is screaming at this point, while she is yelling at him to shut the F up. My boyfriend and the husband came over to help, but the wife told them to go away because she's got it handled. The wife asks if I would mind taking him to the bathroom to rinse him, and the only reason I say yes is because I'm seriously worried about the kid. I strip him and run warm water in our tub and put him in. Then I put a thermometer in his mouth, and lo and behold, he has a temperature of 106 degrees. Not a good sign at all. That, paired with symptoms of vomiting, rapid breathing, and looking really lethargic, is a combination good enough for the ER. So I yell for the mother to get to the bathroom and ask her where she thinks he got the food poisoning from. She says she doesn't know, he's just eaten fruit for the past 2 days. I'm freaking out because his symptoms are consistent with meningitis. The poor kid keeps grabbing his head and crying, so clearly he's got a headache too. I ask her if she's gotten him vaccinated for meningitis, and she said she doesn't think he's been vaccinated at all. I'm going into panic now. I feel Jake's neck, and I try to ask him slowly if he feels like it's difficult to move. He just cries more. I ask her to call for my boyfriend and husband and explain the situation to them, and the husband confirms the baby has not been vaccinated for the meningococcal back. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So it's a no-brainer at this point. I tell them how life-threatening this infection is and that it may leave Jake paralyzed. The wife bursts into tears and gives the okay, so all 4 of us, plus Jake, get in their car to drive to the ER. My boyfriend is driving and I'm in the back cradling Jake and checking for rashes on his arms and legs with a cell phone flashlight. The wife is still crying. I'm close to crying. We finally get to the ER and I tell them there is a 2-year-old with symptoms blah 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 with no vaccination for meningitis and we suspect he has it. They immediately bring him in and asked me if I was the parent and I said no and pointed to the wife who was trailing behind me in tears. They brought her in with the toddler and told me to stay in the waiting area. At this point, I take my first breath. 5 minutes later, the husband and my boyfriend come rushing in and I tell the husband to go and talk to the staff so they could bring him in. He does, and my boyfriend comes to hug me, and F it, I just started bawling my eyes out. He keeps telling me he's sorry and that it's his fault. I'm still crying into him. He calls an Uber for me and tells me to go home and get some sleep and that he'll handle the rest. I'm too tired to resist, so I get home at like 12 AM, brush my teeth, and just crash after I got a text saying they put him on antibiotics and they're waiting for blood test results and the culture, but that he was stable. I wake up the next morning at like 10 AM and the apartment is like super quiet and my boyfriend isn't in bed next to me. So I get up and walk into our living area and I see him sleeping on the couch and not a single luggage bag or pregnant wife in sight. I nudge my boyfriend awake and he tells me everything that happened. The toddler is in the ICU and my boyfriend managed to get a hotel nearby for them for half the price after telling them what happened. He paid for a week-long stay for them and then helped move everything out of the apartment and to the hotel with the husband while the wife was at the hospital. He kept saying he was sorry and that he didn't think anything through and for me to forgive him. I said it was okay and I hugged him. It turned out to be one heck of an experience I don't ever want to relive again, but I'm glad that Jake is safe and I'm glad they won't be living with us. Okay, so that is the end of the update. OP has just added a few more key points as well for further context. So the pregnant wife, husband and toddler, she says, chose to drive over 600 miles to live in our 2-bedroom apartment instead of living with the husband's wealthy, only around 200 miles away, family, who were also the ones to pay for their house and house them for 2 years. I have my suspicions as to why this is the case, but you make your own judgments. And finally, the pregnant wife's behavior is no different than normal. I've been to their house multiple times. I can confirm that she curses at her child, drinks while pregnant, and is unable to adequately care for the child. Alright, let's jump into some comments before I give my final thoughts. To be honest, I'm not even sure what I'm thinking right now, so hopefully these comments will give me some sort of clarity, and maybe you guys as well. Somebody said, kudos for catching on that Jake was sick. I'm glad he's on the mend. Probably was a good thing that initially they did go there so you could catch it. It probably saved the kid's life. OP said, thanks, I'm really glad it happened too. Somebody else said, you are a freaking hero. I started crying just reading this. I live in Alberta and a couple of years ago, a couple here killed their son by ignoring vaccines and medical care. He had meningitis. It was heartbreaking and it's still going through the court system. This couple literally owes you their son's life. Get freaking vaccinated, people. Now, OP replied to this saying, thanks, but I'm not a hero, but yes, please get vaccinated. And interestingly, somebody below this said, I thought the meningitis vaccine wasn't approved for kids until they are 11 in the US. And I think I've seen that as well. It even might be a little bit older than that in some states. I'm not entirely sure on that. Let me know in the comments down below. But OP replied, some infants and toddlers can get it if they suffer from some deficiencies, autoimmune disorders, or are HIV positive. Okay, sure, but as in, the point being, the fact that they didn't have the vaccine yet, this toddler, was not an abnormal thing at all. As most kids, well, I don't know, according to that comment, you can't get the meningitis vaccine before the age of 11. Somebody else said, sometimes things happen for a reason. It seems like this happened to you so you could save a life. Bad experience for you, good for the kid. Yep, I'm thankful that I was able to catch on to a few of his symptoms, OP said. I'm no doctor by any means, but meningitis is an incredibly scary infection. I'm glad I urged them to go to the ER. But I must say, I lost a lot more respect for the family from this experience. Somebody else said, I wouldn't have known. My kids are all fully vaccinated and I'd barely heard of meningitis. Probably because it's been vaccinated against. I'm a generation who never had to deal with it. Somebody replied, yeah, but a kid who's repeatedly throwing up, lethargic and with a fever of 106 is very sick. It's one thing to not know it's meningitis. It's another to forget him in the car and scream shut the F up at him while he cries. That being said, her house had just burnt down, so I'd add a little forgiveness for mitigating circumstances. Great comment. That is a perfect comment right there. Because yes, I completely agree. Screaming shut the F up at your toddler who is clearly extremely sick is ridiculous. But then with the context of knowing that your house has just burned down and dealing with that, yeah, mitigating circumstances 100%. But then OP said to this, and maybe this is the main point. What's sad is that is how she regularly treats the kid. I've witnessed her swear at him multiple times. She also leaves him home alone while she goes out drinking. Okay, there we go. So much to unpack there. I'm going to try and sum it up and give my thoughts as well as I can. But give me a break. This is going to be tough. Okay, so there we go. You know what? I actually think that with the context now of knowing that this woman is clearly just not a good mum, if we're taking everything that OP says as gospel here, right, which I'm going to do because you kind of have to, then it sort of explains, well, it does explain, let me say, why OP has sort of reacted in this way the entire time. First of all, we have the fact that, yeah, she's just like goes out drinking while pregnant, leaves her 2-year-old kid abandoned at home, etc., etc. That is just disgraceful. Secondly, the fact that they have family nearby, or much nearer by, about a third of the distance away, that are wealthy. They've lived with them before, and they could easily live with them again, surely. I mean, like, if you've lived with somebody before and your house has burned down, they're gonna let you live with them again. So all of that sort of new context, I suppose, is definitely valid reasons for OP to say, you know what, I know what you've been through here, but I don't want you living with us because you don't need to live with us, and also we're not in the right sort of space to deal with you. So with all of that being said, I do sort of get what OP is saying a lot more than I did at first. I was just sort of taken aback by, in my opinion, the lack of understanding at first from OP. Their house has just burned down. I mean, how many times have I said that? You've got to make sacrifices for people in that situation. But yes, maybe not these people. And I think that's the key point. And the more that I read here, the more context we got, the more I'm realizing that it's not about their house burning down, actually, at all. It's the fact that these people are not good people, probably. And OP just really doesn't value them at all. Yeah, if it was another set of people whose house had burned down that were good parents and really did have no other options, then OP would be much more inclined to sacrifice. I think that's kind of what I'm understanding here. Let me know if I'm wrong, if you are getting different sort of points from OP, but I think that is the gist of things. And yeah, I suppose it makes sense. I'm still a bit like, oh, just let them stay with you. But I guess if like they're not even seeing that their kid is dying in front of them, then probably pretty terrible people. Although you did save a life, take solace from that. And again, I do agree with that one comment about the mitigating circumstances. It's tough to know. There's a lot going on in the story. I'm still not 100% sure what I think, but yeah, you guys let me know in the comments down below what you think. What's interesting is that some people in the comments of this are like, they're not buying it fully. So I want to put this comment on screen. I do want to end with this because I'm not sure if this all adds up, to be honest. I've just sort of semi-skimmed through it again. Let's put this on screen. Am I the only one whose BS sensors are going off? Some things just aren't adding up here. OP somehow picked up diagnosis of meningitis from the few symptoms: vomit, fever, headache. That's fair. I mean, meningitis is very rare these days. So to immediately jump to that is either very impressive or not 100% true. Then somehow she had time to throw 2 bags of vomit from the car into the trash because it would become a severe health hazard otherwise, all while managing to get a sick toddler out of the car. I think that's all believable, by the way. Yet she actually left the vomit in the carpet of her own home until the next morning, which her boyfriend cleaned up, according to her comments later on. Also, she was trying to paint the parents as some type of anti-vaxxers, but the vaccine isn't even available for 2-year-olds. I think that is a good point. And if the mum was really the type to drink while pregnant and leave her 2-year-old at home so that she could party, you would think that OP would have stepped up and done something about it by now. That's probably like the extreme other way of looking at this story, thinking, okay, let's actually really think about this critically. Again, I'm not sure. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I do slightly get what this comment is saying though. Like, and it's always tough with Reddit because you're only ever reading, well, most of the time, one person's perspective on things. I mean, I'd love to hear from the other couple in this. Ideally from the toddler. I mean, what illness did they really have? But yeah, there we go. I've waffled for too long. This is one where we're going to have a lot of discourse in the comments, probably. So get down there right now. If you're still watching, get down in the comments. If you're still listening, get down in the comments. See what people are saying. Interact with people. That's the beauty of content like this, is that, as I said, there's no right or wrong answer. Get in the comments and see if you agree with people down below. I do not understand this kind of entitlement at all. Lack of basic self-preservation. My daughter is 32 and has a live-in boyfriend who is 34. He's also the father of our grandchild, of whom we have custody. Now, her boyfriend has a level of entitlement I frankly cannot understand. I'm just left with my mouth gaping open at his attitude. He moved to our state over 5 years ago, following our daughter after he was evicted from his family's home for being a deadbeat. Both his mother and aunt have kicked him out and will not allow him to return. His mother kept his dog and kicked her son out. That's funny to me. Since his arrival, he's not held a regular job for more than a week. His most recent example was him working for a grocery store in the deli. He quit after a week when they passed him over for an assistant manager's spot. A week. He started many jobs in the past 5 years and quit nearly immediately after they offend him in some way, which usually is a trumped up reason based on some slight offense, mostly not treating him like the royalty he thinks he is. Another example, a friend of a friend got him a job on a construction site. He just had to arrive with safety boots and he'd be guaranteed to have a job holding a sign that said slow, stop on it. Just stand there and hold the sign. He missed the start date. However, he lucked out as the FOAF involved was sick that first day and they rescheduled a start for the following week. Boyfriend didn't show, no job for you. He's done some DoorDash and similar gig work, but will only do it if his girlfriend goes along, so she can do the jump out and get or drop the package part of the gig. He just wants to drive. This means that he's only willing to work when she isn't at work. This is now moot since their cars have been repossessed. My daughter later lost her $25 per hour full-time job. Her fault, see the below note, and she's now cleaning houses, Airbnbs, apartments as gig work. She is their sole income source. At one point, he got into a state program that gave you a place to live, gave you drug, alcohol, employment counseling, meds, and work to integrate you into society. He didn't last a week after he refused to participate in group counseling sessions. And of course, participation is a requirement for the program. There was a time where our daughter was in jail/rehab where he didn't have a place to live and was living on the street. He'd rather do that than get a job. He also refused to stay in a shelter. It was beneath him. There's certainly a victim component here. Nothing is ever his fault. Everything happens to him and it's all terribly unfair. He has to be the center of attention. He left a play date with his kid after they weren't paying enough attention to him. There's an entire history here that rapidly gets into too long didn't read territory. Drugs, DV charges, child neglect, TPOs, etc. They're all relatively minor misdemeanor charges and issues, the kind of thing the judge gives you probation for. He's also failing to participate in any of his probation requirements, therapy/drug testing, and is likely to be violated soon. Most of what seems to be missing is, to me, basic self-preservation. If I meet my probation requirements, I don't go to jail. If I work this week, I can buy food. He seems to lack any awareness of cause and effect. For the record, he spent about a week in jail after the DV thing and was calling his girlfriend multiple times per day to bail him out. He doesn't like jail, but won't do anything to avoid it. She did bail him out and he missed his court date afterwards. I just cannot understand that he doesn't seem to understand that if you work, then you can eat and sleep in a bed. His avoidance of employment and any form of responsibility is like some sort of compulsion or mental illness. There's nothing rational about it. It strains my liberal brain, the part that says, give people a hand up, not a hand out. He only wants the handout. Any hand up is refused. So, thanks for reading my rants. Apologies for the ellipses and parenthetical remarks. I write like my ADD brain thinks, which is with a lot of parentheses. Fair enough. That makes sense to me. Well, there we go. That is the end of that one. And I think all I can say is that this guy just seems like the biggest loser ever. I mean, to be fair, it's getting a little bit dangerous with like the drugs, the charges, like the child neglect, etc. It sounds to me as if this guy could just do with going to prison for a bit, just to get out of everyone's lives. Maybe it would help him, but mostly just I feel for your daughter. Like, what is she doing? Messing around with him. Like, it's crazy. I don't know. I don't know what she sees in him. I don't know. That's the power of love, I suppose. But goodness me, how can you be with someone as pathetic as this? Is actually insane. And yeah, as I said in the intro, this guy is a definition of entitled. Just nothing going for you at all. No drive, no effort in your life to improve it whatsoever, and just expects things to be handed to him. What a joke. Entitled bully gets their just rewards. My wife has an entitled co-worker / acquaintance. I use the term acquaintance as she does run in our friend circle, but we try to limit or avoid contact with her. We'll call her Carrie. Anyway, Carrie is known for bullying co-workers at work, saying that she can get people fired, she can't, screaming at people, and at large, just general bad behavior. Her favourite thing to intimidate people with is to tell them to F around and find out. Remember this for later. So, Carrie had an F buddy. Nothing serious, just a guy she'd bang and kick out the door. Carrie is also notorious for collecting engagement rings. She'd begin dating a guy, get a ring from them, get them to pay off some bill for her, then kick them to the curb. Again, I bring this up only as context to her character and to reinforce that the F-buddy guy meant nothing to her. She didn't actually date him or try getting a ring from him. She used him and then kicked him to the curb whenever someone with money showed her attention. She'd also frequently talk trash about this guy behind his back. So, Carrie was on one of her short-term engagements. So the F-buddy, let's call him Bill, was currently not someone she was seeing, as the new guy just bought her a $6,000 ring. I'm serious, she actually collected engagement rings like they were Pokemon, and paid 10 grand to get her roof fixed. So she was happy with this guy and had no interest at all in Bill. Enter Mandy. Now Mandy is another co-worker of my wife and Carrie. I personally don't know her, but from what I've been told, she just got out of a 15-year marriage where she wasn't allowed to do anything and was very controlled. Carrie and Mandy are friends. Well, drinking buddies. Carrie likes to drink a lot. And by like, I mean all the time, but nevertheless, they were on good terms. So randomly, Mandy meets Bill. Mandy doesn't know Bill's history with Carrie, nor that he even knows her. They hit it off, like really good, and they're getting along so well that they begin dating. And it blossoms into a great relationship, one that's built on respect and love. Carrie finds out and loses her frickin' mind. Again, she never dated Bill and never wanted to date Bill. She never had any interest in him besides sex. Heck, she's currently engaged to a guy, but no, Mandy took her man, and she let the world know about it. Carrie started by going to their boss daily and asking him, "Why does that little female dog still work here?" She would also loudly exclaim this on the work floor for all to hear. Also, Carrie spent a whole hour yelling and screaming at her for something that Mandy didn't even do. She'd also frequently harass them both when they were out and about in town. She'd loudly call Mandy a female dog, a tramp, the C word, just all the nasty things you can say about someone. She would not only loudly say these things in their proximity, but tell anyone that would listen, or not listen, basically just anyone around her, how she was wronged by Mandy and Bill, and what she thought about it, and that Mandy is effing around, so she's going to find out. Fast forward 2 months, Mandy and Bill are still together and extremely happy. Carrie is, not surprisingly, no longer engaged to that guy. Also, not surprisingly, she's already been engaged to another guy and married after a week. Where is she finding these men, by the way? Who are they? It was unfortunately the 2-year anniversary of the passing of a mutual friend of all parties involved. Carrie is using this time to take the week off work to drink. This is a whole other can of worms. Basically, she isn't as close to this person who passed as she claims to be. But anyways, once work is over, everyone else agrees to go to the bar to have a drink to celebrate the departed life. So again, once Carrie, after 2 full days of drinking, sees Mandy, she begins to lay into her with all the slut-shaming stuff. Mandy, finally having enough of it, attempts to talk to Carrie in an attempt to reconcile. Carrie's having none of this and keeps calling her names and proceeds to tell her that Mandy is freaking around and is going to find out, and ends calling her a C word. Well, I'm guessing something snapped, and Mandy straight snapped and threw a beer bottle straight at Carrie, hitting her in the face. Imagine the cop in The Big Lebowski throwing the coffee cup, knocking her on her butt. There's a slight pause and someone I don't know pipes up. It looks like you were the one that effed around and found out. Carrie, obviously stunned, gets up and leaves. The next day, she showed up to work with a very obvious black eye. She's not saying anything to Mandy, but she's going around to everyone else complaining that she was the victim, not understanding that everyone has been watching her bully this poor girl for the last few months. And that's kind of it. Nothing else has happened since then, but if it does, I'll let you know. Sorry, this got long-winded. There we go, some classic entitled people karma right there. Like, this person is just a bully, you're absolutely right, and no one was ever going to take her side in this one. And I'm sure that a lot of people at your work are pretty delighted, I mean, as far as you can be delighted that someone has been physically hurt, that she got assaulted, because sometimes that just needs to happen. Now, a few of you in the comments of one of my recent videos, and you were right to do this, by the way, said, when I said about sometimes I do think like a little bit of violence is the answer, you said that's wrong. And I kind of agree. However, again, like, I read something like this. This person's getting horribly bullied. Nothing was changing. Is a bottle in the eye the worst thing? Like, she's fine, isn't she? She's got a black eye. That'll heal in a week. If she's going to stop bullying, I don't know. I'm just saying. Sometimes violence can be the answer in rare, extreme circumstances where everything else has been tried. A little bottle to the eye, you know, maybe that's the way forward. I'm not being 100% serious there, but I don't know. The world's unfair, man. Sometimes you need some good karma like that. Now, the next two stories I've got for you today are relatively similar. They involve a couple of entitled people entering locations very, very close to their closing time. Let's get into the first one right now. Then you should have come in before 10. This is a story from the time I spent working in a kitchen. It was a restaurant right next to a music venue, and we got busy on concert weekends, but during the off-season, it could get quite quiet with just a few regulars. We had music nights, and the bar was usually serving drinks until close, so we would be open all year. During a quiet late fall day, after doing cleaning and checking dates, we had some apples that needed to be used for something before they got mealy. I used the opportunity to work on my pie recipe. We usually didn't do pies, so it was a change of pace and it kept me busy so I wouldn't be forced to scrub some unused corner. The pie was great, and the head chef said it was one of the best he'd ever tasted. He even took one home to eat. Kitchen closes, and we clean everything and break down our stations, put dates on our stuff, and throw it in the walk-in. I get to the point I could wait out the last 10 minutes at the bar. It's 5 minutes to close, and I'm waiting for my ride home. In walk the entitled customers. 2 people for drinks at 10:55 isn't unusual. They're told we're closing soon. They say, though, "We want food." I stand up. "I'm sorry, the kitchen is closed and the line cooks have gone home. We can't serve food." "I thought this was a restaurant," the guy in the leather jacket sneers. "Well, we have some apple pie that I made myself I can serve if you want dessert, no charge." I was using my best customer service to get the bartender a good tip. "We want real food," the woman in the fur replies indignantly. "Then you should have come in before 10. The bar is now closed. Get out," my bartender friend says unceremoniously and starts turning off the lights. I walk to the kitchen, taking their cue, and I turn the lights off. I was in the walk-in when I heard the guy follow me into the now dark kitchen and say, "Seriously?" The bartender says, "No, that's not the door out, and I can't have you in the kitchen. Please leave the way you came in." The bartender starts printing end-of-night credit card reports. To someone unfamiliar with the kitchen, it must have looked like I walked through the door and vanished. The couple stomped out of the bar, and I poked my head out of the fridge to turn off the parking lot lights, letting them go to their car in darkness. Later, when the bartender drove me home, they told me that that couple has only been there a few times. They've never tipped, and they've argued the bill with the owner on more than one occasion. She'd always wanted to kick them out, but when they refused free dessert to try and get food an hour after the kitchen had closed and were so rude about it, she finally had her opportunity. The 2 of them never came back while I was working there. The bartender and I ate pie at her house and we laughed about it. You know what's a shame about this story is that You were so nice to them in the first place. Like, offering them pie for free that you just made that isn't for them is so nice. But no, they're just entitled, just horrible people. Fair play to the bartender as well for being like, you know what, now you're done, get out, I can't be done with this. And also, I really have like a funny picture of them walking back to their car in the parking lot, and the lights just suddenly going from being bright to off, and them just being like, oh right, well, we've just been done here. Great stuff. I kicked a client out the door because he came in 5 minutes before closing. I work at a copy center. We print documents and photos. At 9:54 p.m, a guy came in to print business cards. First of all, why the heck is he here 5 minutes before closing time? Second, he came in with something that can't be solved in 5 minutes because A, it's frickin' business cards, and B, he started asking a bunch of stupid follow-up questions, meaning he had no idea what he needed. You're probably guessing that business cards are printed and sliced on a machine in large runs. We have a minimum of 50 plus pieces in our production facility, and that it's not done in a regular office with a Xerox machine. Even if it isn't, that's fine, because you'll likely listen politely to my explanation, realise you won't get the results you want now, and go home afterwards. But he didn't go home. He continued to ask if it was possible to print on a regular sheet of paper right now. I, knowing the tricks of Xerox, said that no, double-sided printing of business cards will not work. It prints with a shift of a few millimeters, and if you adjust the layout of business cards to this shift, you'd just be freaking tired of moving this trash by a millimeter on the screen, but the result won't be achieved, and the colour will definitely not be the same. He continued to insist that he needed these stupid business cards and asked how long it would take me to adjust this layout, to which he received a direct answer, no time, because I won't be doing it, especially now. But even after that, he didn't calm down, and he asked me to make him some that are at least one-sided. To make him finally go away, I actually printed him a couple of sheets of his business cards on plain paper. I'll clarify, I don't mind getting into a person's situation if they urgently need to do something to help them, even if working hours are over, but this guy came in with a blissful smile and a pile of questions, not giving a frick about the fact that it's not my working hours. What killed me was when he started asking irrelevant questions, like, where do you go to college? Again, nothing wrong with small talk, but not at 10 p.m. I realised he's a total jerk, and at this pace, he's going to sit here until he's tongue-tied or ends up starting to hit on me. I asked him if he'd take these papers, which he didn't like the colour of course, and he said no. So I pointed him to the door with a straight hand and said goodbye. So that is the end of that one. OP has left a little comment at the end, a little edit, saying, after reading the comments, I wanted to add one clarification. The client was out of the door at 10:03 p.m. after my shift was over. Fair enough if you think that service workers should be overworked for free because of your poor time management. Go and touch grass. The world doesn't revolve around you, which I respect. You're not getting paid overtime for helping him out, you know, as much as you're saying earlier that yeah, you would normally help. If someone is just doing this on purpose, which it seems like they are, like, if you don't have the courtesy to be like, I know it's really late, can I do this? Like, do you have 5 minutes, whatever, to even ask that question, and then just ask loads of random questions when it must be pretty obvious that this person, OP, is trying to get out and close up, then you are a bit of a jerk, realistically, aren't you? So, yeah, there's like, on the one hand, good customer service. On the other hand, I'm not getting paid for this for overtime and you're just being horrible. So what's the point? So I rate what you did there. Well done, and it sounds like you only lost 3 minutes of your time. You want to hit a disabled person? Have fun with 30 plus years in jail. This happened in January, but the district attorney called me 2 days ago with the update. I am a wheelchair user because of a fainting disorder, severe POTS for those wondering. Now, POTS stands for postural tachycardia syndrome, when your heart rate increases very quickly after getting up from sitting or lying down, often making you feel dizzy or lightheaded. Okay, I didn't know that. There's currently actually no cure as well. Well, firstly, OP, I'm very sorry that you suffer from that. Anyway, let's get back into the story. I came home from work to see a car parked right under a no parking fire lane and on the sidewalk. It blocked the way into my apartment and I had to leave the wheelchair in my car. I started taking photos of the car because this had been an issue with the owner for months. My landlord had told me to get photos of it and email them to him every time she did it after I mentioned it in passing. While taking a photo, the owner came out of her apartment to scream at me. I stayed calm and I tried to walk into my apartment. She got in my face to continue screaming, and by reflex, I just shoved her back. She then grabbed me by the throat and began to punch me. After a minute, my neighbours and roommate, who were having a smoke, came running and got her off of me. Police were called. Paramedics showed up because my neck was bleeding, she had acrylic nails, and I ended up going to the ER because I had a syncope episode while the paramedics were there. Now again, a syncope is another word for fainting or passing out. I wasn't sure about that, but there we go. Someone is considered to have syncope if they become unconscious and go limp, then soon recover. I decided to press charges, thinking I'd just get an aggravated assault or something. I made sure that they got her while she was home because I knew she had a gun on the wall despite being a convicted felon. When the police went to arrest her, they found that the car was stolen without insurance, she didn't have a license, there were used needles all over the apartment with her 8-year-old child, and the gun was also marked stolen. The child is in foster care and she is now in jail without bond. The DA said that her child recorded it. She apparently told her to, and it was already ruled as an assault because of the overwhelming proof, plus the 7 counts of assault she's gotten in the past 5 years already. Oh my goodness. Had I gotten her nailed with it outside her home, she would have only gotten probation, since she was a parent. But now she's lost her kid, her home, her car, and she's going to be in jail for about 30 years or more, depending on what the state charges her with for the drugs. Wow. I mean, wow. Just coming out of your house and grabbing someone by the throat and punching them in the face. What sort of person does that? It's just insane. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, if this revenge is nuclear. I think it's more just like the justice that this woman deserved. Like, yeah, 30 years is a lot, but that's the way she's lived her life. She's done so many illegal things that she deserves 30 years. Like, I think nuclear would be if you had grabbed her by the throat and then just killed her. That probably would be more nuclear. But yeah, being realistic, I think that this is completely legitimate, and, you know, the law has said she deserves to go to jail for 30 years or more. That's not nuclear, that's just justice. I'm not sure what the damage was to you in the end. You didn't actually say how badly you were damaged. I mean, you went to the ER, but were you there for a while or not? I'm not sure. I mean, your neck was bleeding, that's never good. But it sounds to me as if you did society a favor by taking this hit. Yeah, it wasn't a good thing for you. And whether or not you stayed in the ER for a long time or not, it's terrible. However, getting this woman off the streets, out of society and into jail for that length of time is a great thing. You had to sacrifice your neck, but it was worth it. Wow. What a terrible, terrible woman. Let's move on to the second story. Now moving on to our next revenge story. I got poisoned by my old job. I called in my dad, outed them for illegal practices, caused my 2 brothers that worked with me to quit with me, and plunged their store down their ranking lists. Now I warn everyone not to buy anything from there. This is going to be a long one, so settle down friends as I tell you the horrors of this danged store. So, I, a 21-year-old man, used to work at a particular chain of southern grocery stores that sounds like the word Pringles. I worked at their stores from age 18 to 21, and I only quit last year. I'm turning 22 in July. So yeah, these stores were the only places I ever worked. I don't want to get into all the nasty details, or we'd be here for years, but this corporation is so messed up and corrupt. They did everything from shuffling around sexual offenders from store to store to firing people based off of race and religion. I myself got harassed a ton by another worker and several recurring customers, and nothing was ever done about it. But that's a different story. Now, on to why I quit from the first store. At this time, I was freshly 19. I was the main cook at the Asian food station at the deli, on top of manning several other stations. I was kneeling down to get the sauces from a low fridge when I breathed in, and I felt something hit me in the back of the brain. I was thrown off for a second, but I figured I was fine. They had an outside contractor in our area doing some work, so I just assumed that I caught a whiff of a cleaner that he was working with. I picked up the wok of orange chicken I'd been making, and I brought it up to the serving station and put it up, when one of the servers, a very sweet elderly woman, asked if I was okay, looking very concerned. I still felt fine at the moment, so I said yes, but that was it. For the moment. I immediately felt the worst brain haze I'd ever felt. My feet went out from under me and my vision went completely blurry. I stumbled backwards and I was able to catch myself on the counter behind me. Later on, the server told me she asked if I was okay because I hadn't only just lost all my colour, I'd gone grey. It felt like all my balance was gone. I worked with two of my brothers at the same location and one of them came running to help me stand. I had vague memories of my brother helping me walk to the indoor cafe, but my head was literally lulling in circles. I couldn't keep it upright. I think I almost fell on one of the managers from the front of the store. My brother made me sit down at a table and got me a cup of water. That's when I realised I was crying. My heart was pounding so hard, my entire front of my uniform was moving with it. Whatever my body was reacting to was so bad, it was overwhelming it. I felt like I couldn't move. I was just sunk into the chair, crying. I tried to pick up the cup, and my brother had to come back to help me take a drink. At this point, I was panicking. A fact about the kitchen that I, as the head chef, was painfully aware of, we had a gas-run pizza oven, a really old gas-run oven. A gas-run oven that you had to kick to get all 4 burners to get on. I'll tell you now though, that wasn't a gas leak, but that's where my brain immediately went to, especially since they refused to do maintenance on that oven, or the gas-run open flame woks, one machine away from said oven. This whole time I felt like I wanted to throw up, but at the same time I couldn't. The supervisor told my brother he had to stop checking on me and that he'd get in trouble if he kept checking. The supervisor and other members of morning shift, I was a night shifter, my other night shifters know how it is, well, they were treating me like I was exaggerating. One of them came over, one of whom I particularly hated because she looked down on everyone, and started baby talking about how some people are just weaker than others. This whole time I was panicking and telling her I wasn't exaggerating, and everyone else needed to leave the deli until we figured out what it was. And it was affecting me so badly, it had been an hour and my body was still panicking. It was bad. She though just brushed me aside and left again. That's when I realised they weren't going to investigate what happened to me at all. And they were going to keep everyone, including my 2 brothers, working in the same area I just got affected in. That's when our absolute hero shows up. The nearby McDonald's manager. A sick dude around the same age as me that regularly got food at the deli. I'd served him a few times. He'd been sitting in the cafe on his lunch break from his job when he saw me. He immediately came over and asked what was wrong, as we were on bro terms. I gave him a breakdown on what was going on and he went over to check it out. He came back and said that he didn't smell a gas leak, but I was definitely displaying concerning signs. So, without linking himself to me, he went up to the front of the store and basically demanded they do something about it. However, the front management realised it must have been me, so their solution, not to find out what did this to me, to take me from the cafe, drag me up to the management office and sit me in a swivel chair so they could keep an eye on me. That's right, they sat a dude that couldn't balance on his own in a swivel chair next to a desk corner. They proceeded to completely ignore me and not let my brothers come into the office to talk to me, and I was still panicking about the fact that the other workers could breathe in whatever I had done. I was finally able to coordinate enough to pull my phone out of my apron pocket and text my dad. I texted him a very short list of PowerPoints of what happened, and he asked a few questions about why my management was acting like they were, which all I could say was, I don't know. Now, this wasn't my proudest moment. A 19-year-old guy who'd been crying for over an hour and couldn't stop, texting his dad, I don't know what's happening, Dad, but I'm scared and I need you. You know what, bro? I've got to interject here and say respect for sending that message. That just shows that you're not too proud. I mean, people that are too proud wouldn't send that message. People that, have too much of an ego, even when they clearly need as much help as they can. I mean, who knows at this point? You might have been dying. I mean, we'll get on to more of the story in a second, but you've got to send these messages and not let your pride get in the way. So yeah, you shouldn't say that you're not proud. You should actually say that you're proud of not being too proud to send a message like that, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's get back into it. My dad told me he was on his way and to clock out. I told the managers my dad was coming and I needed to clock out. At this point, they were acting annoyed with me, especially the store owner. I could talk for days about how terrible the store managers were, so they were glad I was leaving. They offered to help me walk to the time clock. I should have taken their offer, but I was so angry and disappointed I refused, and I just held onto the front desk and shelving as I got to the clock out room. I clocked out and I stumbled my way back to the area I worked at to get my stuff. I had to bring my own supplies to work because they never gave us new equipment, so I had a whole backpack I needed to grab. My brothers immediately tried to run over to me when they saw me, but the manager blocked them and told them to keep working. How toxic is that? Before I could get my backpack, my manager, a woman that I'd been working under since I was 18 and frankly scared me, blocked me from going into the back room to get my bag and started demanding answers from me. Once again, this is not a proud moment. I have a medical condition that made me stop growing at 14, so I'm pretty easily intimidated. She was taller and stronger than me, and I still felt completely vulnerable. All of my senses were still shot, and my body was still in panic mode. I tried to answer her questions, but I was just mumbling and stumbling over my own words. That's when I saw him. My dad. My dad is a 5'6" man who worked as a jack-of-all-tradesman for most of my childhood. I'm talking plumber, electrician, groundskeeper, roofer, builder. At this time, he was working as a contractor, so he quite literally was building and modifying higher class houses in the mountains. He came storming in his contracting gear with a bandana wrapped around his head. That is when I knew I was going to be okay. My brothers talked about it later, but if anyone knew anything about my dad, if he had that bandana on, he was going after someone and they were royally screwed. He walked up and immediately crossed his arms, demanding to know what happened to his kid. Once again, not a proud moment, but I moved to hide behind him. My manager was caught off guard for a moment, but recovered and started telling my dad that I'd just overreacted to a cleaner the contractor was using. At that time, I'd figured it must have been something that the contractor was using, but I didn't know for sure, so the fact they knew what had done this to me and didn't feel the need to tell me made me mad, but it annoyed my dad so much. He demanded to talk to the contractor. If you've ever heard a 49-year-old man get mad, you can imagine the tension in his voice. He didn't yell. He never yells, but when he gets serious, the tension in his voice is genuinely terrifying. The contractor they hired came over. That's when my dad's expertise clicked in. My dad, the contractor. In other words, the guy that knew all the local laws around contracted labour. He asked all the right questions. He demanded to see what the contractor had been spraying around the kitchen that day. When they handed him the can, he tore the contractor a new one. So the kitchen I work in is blocked from the rest of the deli area by a counter. A counter has about an inch of space under it for cleaning purposes. So when I leaned down, this spray had shot under the counter and directly into my face. And what was that spray? An industrial grade degreaser. It was so strong it was meant to be used in empty factories by someone in a full respirator mask. It wasn't supposed to be sprayed around people, and especially not right in someone's face. My dad immediately pointed this out and demanded to see the contractor's safety sheet on the chemical, something that all contractors in our area are required to carry on every chemical they use to show they know how to safely use it. The contractor said he had it in his van. He did not. The man was using one of the strongest factory-grade degreasers on the market, and he didn't know how to use it. He was wearing a mask while using it, sure, but not a respirator. It was just a plain white dust cover. My dad lost his mind and sent me past my manager to get my bag while he tore them apart. Oh, and the illegal part? Well, the company wasn't supposed to hire outside contractors for this exact reason, but my manager did so that the work wouldn't be filed, so it would seem like our store didn't take any company resources for repair jobs. Anyway, my dad took me home and my siblings came back too. My dad went onto his PC and looked at the full information page on the degreaser. I was in the second stage of serious poisoning. It wouldn't kill me, thankfully, but it wasn't fun. At this point, I had a little bit of my balance back, but I was still panicking and confused. I was able to draft up a text, ripping them a new one, and quitting. I had a pounding headache, and I ended up throwing up 3 times before I fell asleep that night. I woke up the next day unemployed, but a lot happier. I had a headache for several days. I ended up working for the company again for around a year in the future, but that's a different story. Now, every time I get the chance, I out all the garbage I can on this dumpster fire of a trash company. And let me tell you just a few bullet points of dirt I have on them, just for a little more revenge. They wanted me to serve frozen soup that expired in 2018 in 2021. They marked rotisserie chicken that wasn't organic as organic and sold it at a marked up price. They wanted us to cook chicken that went green. They reused expired meat from the meat counter in the ready serve food. They called people slurs outright, okay, as if all the disgusting food stuff wasn't bad enough. They're just calling people slurs. Great. They used outside contractors with no safety standards. The managers shuffle around offenders from store to store and hire offenders that the employees ask them to ban from the store. They purposely marked up prices during times of need, hurricanes, droughts, etc. They have entire teams whose only job is to take down posts about them online because they're that terrible. They called the police on a homeless man trying to stay in the warm during a below freezing day. He wasn't bothering a soul. They didn't update the equipment, leading to several injuries. 2 of my co-workers lost large parts of their fingers. They delayed training until the last moments, leading to my training being 167 days overdue when I did it. They didn't fire an employee that slashed 2 other employees' tires and was known as a stalker. She followed someone all the way to their house. And finally, they had a food safety grade A sign up from 2019, but their current grade was barely above a C, technically a B. And so many freaking more. But this is part of my revenge. If you're in the South and see one of these dang stores, just don't go. Go into Publix. They're better. They treat their employees better. And honestly, I've never met an ex-employee from Pringles that doesn't want the entire corporation to fail and be gone. Anyways, that's the story of what happened and my never-ending revenge. I will never stop outing them for the trash corporation they are, and neither will my family. I sincerely hope I live to see that company gone. Revenge forever. Sincerely, a man that hates that corporation with his entire being. Wow, there we go. Great story. Yeah, it was a long one, but I love the long ones. A lot of context in there. The story was great. And I think the first thing I need to do, and I don't live in America, so I've actually never heard of this store, but just looking through the comments, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm not the one that's accusing this store of doing anything in particular or, having these sort of practices where they let their staff just call people slurs or whatever to one another or employ offenders, etc. But it looks to me like the name of the store is called Ingles. Now, I've not heard of it. Those of you in America, let me know if I'm right or not. But yeah, apparently it's a pretty small chain, only a little over 200 locations. But I can say this: avoid it. I'm not in danger of anyone saying to me that I've made some defamatory remarks or anything that's too incriminating. But just from what I'm seeing here, avoid this store like the plague. Let me make sure it's called Ingles. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to be sued for that, but there we go. That is the name of the store, apparently. Now, one thing that I have to say is, why OP did you not go to hospital throughout all of this? Like, it doesn't matter what your manager or your the other staff are saying to you. You could have been dying. I mean, I don't know what was. You must have had no idea what was going on. Surely someone should have said, like, go to hospital. Like the fact that the staff were stopping your brothers from seeing you. If I'm your brothers, I don't care. I'm getting in there. I'm saying, no, we're going to hospital right now. That's the only thing I don't really understand about this story. But overall, yeah, great stuff. And you're right. If telling your story online, even me like narrating it now, giving my thoughts on it, and you guys all listening and watching to this helps people not go to Ingles anymore, I think it's worth it. Hopefully I can't get sued for this, but I don't mind saying what I've just said based on what I've just read. Okay, now for our third revenge story. Revenge on my former neighbor who vandalized my vehicle. This happened about 15 years ago. My wife and I purchased a home deep in the country in an effort to simplify our lives. We quickly met our neighbors and everything seemed good. A year or so after we moved into the home, my wife got pregnant with our first child. I traveled periodically for work at the time and I was out of town. My wife was wanting to take a relaxing soak in the tub as her feet had swollen due to the pregnancy. As she was trying to relax, the neighbor's dog was barking incessantly. The dog was a large breed and had a big bark. This went on and on for 30 minutes or so. My wife had a pregnancy psycho moment and got out of the tub, put on her bathrobe, and screamed out the door at the neighbour to shut their barking dog up. Well, here is where the story gets pretty fun. The neighbour went full-on redneck on us. They renamed their Wi-Fi SSID to, quote, "I love barking dogs." We would find random things vandalised on our property. One day I came home from work to see my wife picking stuff up from the driveway. Well, it turns out that this redneck had thrown some poorly made nail devices in our driveway in an attempt to puncture my truck's tyres. The next event was truly diabolical. I left for work the next morning, and by the time I got to the interstate, my brakes felt sort of squishy. I pulled into a truck stop to inspect the truck. The petcock valve on my front right brake caliper had been loosened, and my brake fluid had mostly drained out. This guy tried to kill me. I went postal, but with insidious methods. I work in the IT field, so technology is my thing. I had an old laptop that I installed an OS on that is used for security penetration testing, and I cracked their Wi-Fi. I printed interesting things on their printer, including a convincing email from another woman to the husband. I printed prawn photos. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when the cow found that. I discovered that I could go online and sign up for a prison romance pen pal. I signed his wife up and wrote a letter that was supposedly from her. I gave their address and I told the inmate enough about their life, how long they'd been married, what the hubby did for a living, how many kids, dogs, etc. they had, stuff like that, to make it convincing. I expect that her husband had a few words for her after that. I've never told this story before, and I hope it brings someone else even a little bit of joy. That was a funny one. Now, importantly, guys, some of you might be wondering, like me, okay, that's great and all, but did anything actually happen? As in, what were the repercussions? Because this guy has tried to kill you and you haven't gone to the police. So somebody actually asked OP in the comments, okay, but did this actually achieve anything? And OP said, we moved shortly after. I heard they got divorced a couple of years later. So there we go. Sounds like this did have the desired effect. But yeah, crazy, crazy neighbors. This is my fear. I'm actually trying to get a place at the moment, right? And I'm slightly concerned because how do you ever know what your neighbors are going to be like? If you've got people like this next to you, this makes such a difference compared to having, just normal neighbors. You can have the nicest house in the world, be in the nicest place in the world. But if your neighbors are going to be like this and try and kill you, none of that really matters. So maybe I'm thinking of the worst here, but yeah, I wouldn't want to have neighbors like this, that's for sure. However, I suppose if I do, then I'll have some great stories to tell. Now for the final story of this episode. Sent flowers to a, quote, dead ex. I am an 18-year-old guy, and I had an ex who was an 18-year-old girl who I haven't talked to in months. Fast forward to last week, I was talking to a group of friends and her name came up in conversation from a friend of a friend. This friend thought that her and I were still together, and when I explained that we weren't, we continued the conversation about it, and it got me thinking how she's been. Mind you, she went ghost and really made me hurt, but because I'm a very apologetic person, I didn't let it bother me. After the conversation though, I thought I'd reach out and just see how she's doing. So I text her friend, because she's got me blocked, just to see how she's doing. And her friend was all cool about it and the whole thing seemed fine. Until my ex texted my friend, acting like her sister, saying she had died. Little did she know, I remember when she pulled the same stunt with their ex before me. So, the revenge. Me and a group of friends made the 51-minute drive to her house to pay our respects. What we did was we went to a gas station and bought all of their flowers, put them in a basket, and put a card in it marked with our deepest condolences. The card was filled with some of the finest glitter we could find at the dollar store, and off we went to deliver everything. When we get to her house, I told my friends to stay back while I went up and knocked on the door. I set the flowers down on the porch and I walked away. As I'm walking away, however, her dad answered the door and went, "Can I help you?" To which I replied, "I'm sorry for your loss. Her name meant so much to me and it's sad to see her go." In confusion, her dad responded, "She's not dead." As me and the boys leave, her and her friends show up in her car. Then she looks at me and my friends and says, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I thought you died," I replied. Her dad was furious and essentially took all of her freedoms away until summer and actually gave me and my friends each $20 for the inconvenience and gas money. Okay, honestly, who does that? Like, who jokes about their own death like that? Unless you're like 12 and you just have no common sense. But like, ghosting is one thing. Joking about your own death or faking your own death is so dumb. Also, it's so obvious that you're not dead. Like, it's not that hard for someone to work out, oh, are you dead or alive? Like, you don't even have to go to their house. Just go on the internet. It really can't be that hard to know. Also, like, word of mouth. Imagine being her dad. He's probably just like, what are you doing? Like, he's probably sick of her doing this sort of stuff. Probably knows that she's done it before. And that's the reason why he's actually like furious and is like, you know what, guys, thanks for telling me because this is ridiculous. I'm going to give you all some money because of the inconvenience. And she's not doing anything this summer. Like, it's actually insane. The dad's probably a nice guy. The daughter, Jesus, horrible. My husband got fired for harassing a co-worker and won't talk to me about it. I am a 36-year-old woman. And my husband, Charlie, who is a 41-year-old man, and I have been together for 10 years, married for 6. We've had our ups and downs, but we're currently in an up. He's never done anything like this in the past, so it came out of left field for me, and I'm very much shocked and at a loss here. Charlie is a computer programmer and was a senior engineer at his former company, where he'd worked for 4 years. He'd never had any trouble with co-workers, and we're both friendly with a few of them, mostly other men and their wives. On Friday of last week, he came home at around 11 AM and told me he'd been fired. He was really upset and agitated, and I didn't want to push him about it. But he told me that they'd said he was harassing a co-worker and was therefore fired. So the information I've been able to get out of him is this. The co-worker is Beth, a junior engineer who he's never mentioned to me before. He said she's, quote, terrible at her job. Beth slept with a senior engineer we're both friendly with, Darren. Darren wasn't involved in the harassment, wasn't fired, etc. The company's lawyers were there, and among the things they told him was that Beth could have pressed charges, but chose not to. Something happened with her car, but he won't say what. His exact words were, there was something with her car. And finally, he was escorted off of the premises and is not allowed back in the building to get his belongings, and instead has to arrange with security to pick them up after business hours. As far as anything else goes, he won't give me any details. He isn't interested in seeing a lawyer because he says that everything is legal. He's basically admitted to, quote, sending Beth some emails, but he won't say what they said or anything like that. I don't know if Beth sleeping with Darren had to do with it, but the fact that he gave me that detail makes me think it does. I'm not sure how that relates. Darren is a very nice single man who's in his late 20s and approximately the same age as Beth. My mind is running wild here. Charlie has been depressed and withdrawn all weekend. He won't talk to me about it, and he won't talk much in general. I work remotely, so I was home all day with him, and he played video games all day and then went to bed at 6 PM. The fact that he won't tell me anything and isn't interested in seeing a lawyer makes me think that it's bad, and it makes me worry that everything is true and not just a misunderstanding or a small thing blown out of proportion. He has never been flirtatious with other women or cruel to them, and he's also never said anything bad about other women engineers that he's worked with. I don't know what to do here. My instinct is to be supportive of my husband, but I don't know what kind of behavior I'd be supporting. I don't want to run to his co-workers we know and ask them, since they're more our friends than my friends, and while we spend time together at get-togethers or bars, I'm not close with them. In an immediate sense, I don't know what to do about helping someone who is so depressed and won't talk to me. Okay, there we go. That is it for the original post. I completely get what OP is saying. You want to back up your husband here, of course you do, but you don't know what he's done. Can you support someone when you don't know what they've done? I'm not entirely sure, even if they are your husband. If he's not giving you the details, then that's not really your fault. Anyway, let's jump into some top comments before getting into the update for this one. Somebody said, I would tell him you have to assume the worst if he won't be honest with you. I've got to say, he must have done some bad stuff to be escorted off the premises with no warning like that. Either he was hating on her and went over the top, or he tried to F her and went over the top, or he tried to F her and then hated on her. Okay, I suppose, maybe, but I'm not sure about sort of guessing what he's done either. It's one thing him not telling you, it's another thing trying to work out what he might have done. This comment continues saying, edit, I've just reread the whole thing. I'm guessing that he tried to F her, then sent crazy emails and vandalized her car. He could easily still be charged criminally and or sued. Yeah, as I said, I'm not sure about jumping to conclusions, but I get why the people of Reddit are trying to work out or, guess at what might have happened. Somebody else actually replied to this comment saying, I've worked at larger companies, and when they fire people, sometimes they are walked right out of the building. The reasoning is they don't want the fired person to make a scene and rock the boat. It's heartless in my opinion, but it does happen. Something tells me that OP's husband did something terrible because lawyers were there and apparently the girl could have pressed charges. That is very unusual. My guess is OP's husband got jealous that Darren was sleeping with Beth and not him, as he had a crush on Beth for a while, and he flipped out and went all nice guy on her. He mentioned there are emails, so there is evidence in writing as well. This does not bode well for OP. Again, I can't really argue with this comment, and this does seem pretty reasonable. I'm just not sure that I want to go there and say what might have happened. I mean, maybe I'm sort of doing a little bit of a cop-out there because I know there is an update to come, but just my opinion. Anyway, one final comment said this. Seeing as it got so far that he's been fired and he doesn't want to fight it, it sounds like the allegations are probably true. The fact that he brings up Darren makes it seem like he's harassed her as a result of sexual jealousy. Does he usually shut down conversation on things? Does he usually keep things from you? I'd be very cautious about what he's hiding and what it means for you and your relationship. Even if it's not sexual and it's just plain old harassment, do you want to be with a grown man who harasses young women to the point he gets fired? It's a good point. I mean, he's 41. Beth is, in her late 20s. Yeah, you don't want to be with somebody that does this sort of thing, obviously. I mean, no matter what the age of everyone involved is. But anyway, let's, with that all being said, get straight into the update of this one, which was actually posted the next day. By the way, I'm not disagreeing with any of these comments, and what they're saying is probably accurate. Let's be honest. I just wouldn't jump to that conclusion straight away because, we're just guessing. We don't really know. But let's see what actually did happen in the update. OP says, my thread was locked before I was able to respond to any of the comments, but I was able to read them this morning. I got up at 5:30 to go to the gym before work, and my husband was still awake playing video games. I presented him with the very good idea that somebody suggested of sending me an email with the details, but that it wasn't acceptable to shut me out of this situation since it affects me too. His response was basically, the paperwork is in my car. Go get it if you want to read it. I asked him to go and get it so we could look at it together, and he said, you're going to believe what you want anyway. All of this is unusual for our marriage because I'm a pretty patient person, I think. We went out to the car together and he got in, handed me the papers, and left. Well, that is not a good sign. For about 2 hours, I was panicked because I didn't know where he went, if he was okay, if he was thinking of hurting himself. But his mum texted me at 9 saying he was over there, asking me what happened, if everything is okay, etc. His parents live about 15 minutes away, and I guess he told her he's going to be staying there. So, the paperwork. According to the paperwork, he sent Beth multiple harassing emails from anonymous email accounts. The emails are printed out and attached. He apparently did this while at work, and they've been monitoring his user account for 3 months. The emails aren't sexual or romantic in nature, and they're all anonymous, and about how she sucks at her job, wouldn't be there if she wasn't a woman, how she should quit before she gets fired, and how everyone in the office hates her. He made fake user accounts for his company's product that she works on and submitted bad reviews of her work. He also did this while logged in at work. He sent an anonymous email to her boss saying that she was sleeping with a senior engineer on another project. He put a gun catalogue on the windshield of her car. I don't know what this gesture means, but I obviously understand that it was meant to be threatening. Unfortunately, inside was a subscription card that the company auto-filled with his name and address. She also says she's been harassed for the same length of time, about 3 months, on Twitter. He only logged into one Twitter account that harassed her at work, so they can only say that one was him. all telling her to quit her job. So I don't know what to do now. This is all terrifying to me, and I feel so bad for this woman. I have no idea what this is all about. He works with other female engineers, he's worked with male engineers who don't pull their weight, and he's never done anything like this. I would have bet $1 million that he'd never do anything like this. He's at his parents' right now, and I don't know what my next move here could possibly be. This is so scary and out of left field to me. Goodness me, there we go. That is it for the update. Let's jump into some final comments. OP's actually added a little bit more information first of all before I give my final thoughts. So OP said this in the comments down below. I forgot to mention this paperwork is copied from the original and was signed by both him and his company. I don't know if that's a full admission, but it seems damning either way. Somebody said in response to this, time to sit your husband down and give an ultimatum. He needs to give you his side of the story or you two are done. This is clearly a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. Somebody else said, your husband needs serious therapy. What you describe is absolutely abhorrent behaviour. If he is unwilling to get help about this or do anything to convince you that he understands how wrong what he did is, you should seriously consider getting as far away from this man as you can. What he did is evil. Okay, there we go. That is it for the first story of this episode, and that's kind of the reason why I didn't really want to jump to conclusions, because yes, what we've seen there is disgusting. I'm not taking away from that fact, but there was no like sexual stuff in there, which a lot of people were saying in the comments in the original post. I mean, doesn't really change the fact that you've got to leave your husband, right? Like, what is he doing? Also, why is he doing this? This is the main thing that's just so weird. Like, what's happened here in his mind for him to do this? To be honest, it doesn't really matter, but you can't be with someone like this. If he's doing this to a younger woman, I mean, you're a younger woman than him, so who knows? He could easily at some point in your lives together act like that with you. It's too scary, right? You got to get out of there. The cyber harassment is one thing, but leaving your name and address in a gun catalog that you put on someone's car, I mean, leaving the name and address is stupid, but a gun catalog on someone's car? Now, I'm not entirely sure whether that's like him saying to her, I'm threatening you with, a gun, or perhaps he wanted that to be found by, another member of staff on her car. Depends what sort of state this is in. Like, if that happened in the UK, it feels like he might have been trying to set her up a little bit, but all the comments, and I presume all of you guys are saying that no, actually, like, that's just threatening that, he wants to shoot her or something, which is just crazy. Like, again, I know I've said this so many times on the channel, but it's so weird to me how some people can seem so normal. Like, you've been together with this guy for 10 years, married for 6, OP, yet behind closed doors, or not even behind closed doors, at their place of work, they have so much hatred for this one woman for apparently no reason that they would threaten their life. Like, it's insane, and yeah, ultimately, you got to get out of there. Now for our second story of this episode. My ex turned up last night drunk. Tomorrow is his wedding day. Should I tell his soon-to-be wife? I was with my ex for 2 years. It wasn't the best relationship, and we broke up because I moved for uni and just didn't want to be with him anymore. It's been almost 5 years since we broke up, and I'm engaged to be married with my fiance, who is absolutely my soulmate. Yesterday evening at around 10 o'clock, he rang our doorbell drunk. His bachelor party was in the city I live in, and he came to see me. When my fiance opened the door, my ex just started sobbing, saying that he couldn't believe he, my fiance, was real or something like that. We took him into the apartment because he didn't look dangerous. He just vocally vomited before he actually vomited in our bath. What I could gather is that he was still very hurt because of our breakup, that he thinks that we could have made it work, and he regrets treating me badly. He then threw up again and called an Uber to his hotel. It was very surreal. He was fine. We fed him waffles to sober him up and told him to write to us when he was in his hotel to make sure he didn't die or something. I was left with a weird feeling, almost dirty. I'm thinking of contacting his soon-to-be wife. Or should I call him to encourage him to tell that to his fiancée? Or should I not do anything and let this just be an anecdote for my future? Wow. Very, very interesting. I don't know about this one. I really don't. I personally think you have to tell her. You have to tell her. Because if you don't, then you know that he's going into this relationship, into this wedding, into this marriage, not fully in it, right? Like, he's still got regrets. Do you want to be married to somebody that has regrets over their past and that is still, like, as soon as they have a bit of alcohol, thinking about their ex? No. So I think you owe it to her to tell her. I know it's not your place, but also, like, put yourself in her shoes. Anyway, let's see what the people of Reddit had to say about this. Somebody said, wow, interesting. They said exactly the same thing I've just said. Put yourself in his wife's shoes. Would you want to sign your life away to this person? OP replied, I guess I'd want to know, but I would also prefer my partner to tell me that. Yeah, I agree. It isn't your place to tell her, and I agree exactly with your logic there. Tell him to tell her. But I would also say, like, look, if you don't tell her, then I'm going to, because she has to know. Somebody else said, well, would he tell her though? Like, why would he tell her? By telling her yourself, you risk not being believed or coming across as petty, but at least you know somebody tried to warn her. Now, OP left a little edit and a couple of updates below this. First of all, she said, thanks for all the feedback. It seems like Reddit is as split on this as I am. Just because this kept coming up, my main goal with telling her is not for them to break up. I don't want that. That's not why I would want to tell her. The reason for me telling her is solely that I would want to know if I was her. Nothing else. It's also not me bragging about him not being over me. That's not something I care about. And I wonder how some of you twisted it into that. Also, a tiny update. I decided that contacting the bride was the wrong move because we are not friends. However, I sent his sister, an old friend of mine, a message basically saying to talk to her brother because he appeared at my door drunk and distressed, and to make sure he was okay. She thanked me for the message and apologized profusely because my ex had been apparently acting a fool for a few weeks now leading up to his wedding. She asked me if I was okay and if her brother had gone back to the hotel room because they couldn't find him. I told her he'd Ubered home and had written to us that he had arrived in his room at around 11:30 p.m. She thanked me again and I haven't heard from her since. Oh, and another update. His sister called me again to ask me if he'd come by or said anything about his whereabouts. Apparently he didn't show for the wedding. Oh my goodness. Apparently he didn't show for the wedding and nobody knows where he is. So me telling the fiance is now obsolete. Goodness me. Okay, so that update came, I presume, the next day on the wedding day. I forget that this is all happening very, very quickly and the night before the wedding. Jesus. Alright, somebody said in the comments down below, you and your fiance handled every bit of this as graciously as anyone could expect. Contacting his sister was the best move you could have made. Somebody said, oh dang, he ran out on the wedding. That girl dodged a major bullet. And finally someone said, holy heck, the edits. I hope he's okay. Please update us if they find him. I mean, yeah, that is true. Like, it's not just that he ran out on the wedding. Nobody's actually seen him, I suppose, since he left your house, OP. So yeah, I hope he's all right. To be honest, it does sound, I know this is obviously like a crazy event and very, very distressing for the wife to be, but I think in the long term, it's probably a good thing these guys didn't get married. Anyway, 10 days later, we got this final update. Long story short, he bailed. He decided he did not want to commit to his fiancée. Bailed, and days later called to break off the engagement. A few more details. After his sister and I talked, my ex's fiancé reached out and was kind of mad. The best man had told her he went to see me. At first, she was convinced we had sex, so that took a bit of talking. I felt sorry. She was very distraught. She apologized, I apologized, and I told her I wished her the best. Saturday, I received a call from the sister. Apparently, the ex reappeared. He went all the way to France. I'm not actually sure where this is happening. I think it might be in England because of the word uni earlier, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, France, overseas, and this definitely doesn't take place in France, does it? His sister called me to apologize because my ex had stolen one of my lipsticks. I honestly hadn't noticed, but my ex admitted it to her. She PayPal'd me the money to buy myself a new one. I said I wasn't mad, and I asked her how she was and how his ex-fiancé was. On their end, everything is a mess. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Everyone is mad at him. I don't know many more details, and I kind of wasn't willing to ask. But yeah, that's it. Okay, and there we go. One final comment. He stole a lipstick? A lipstick? What? Who does that? It's so bizarre, it's funny. Stealing a lipstick of all things, and then his sister PayPaling you for it? Thank you for the laugh. OP replied saying, our guess is that he just grabbed the first thing he knew was mine that was small enough to fit in his pocket. And there we go. Okay, not quite sure how to react to that one. Slightly strange story all in. This guy, I think, just was battered and clearly had realized over the previous weeks that he did not want to do this. And he was probably too much of a coward to admit it to his fiance and had to do this instead and just, yeah, get out of there. Which is a terrible, terrible thing to do. I mean, if you're going to do something like this that close to a wedding, at least have the decency to actually explain to people that you're not feeling it. If you're not feeling it, yeah, it's pretty poor to do it that late, and I assume that everyone involved is going to lose quite a lot of money on the wedding, but it's at least better than just running away and then just, you know, on the day, the bride-to-be just being like, well, where's my fiance? Where's my husband? And just, you know, obviously being devastated. But yeah, there you go. As for stealing the lipstick, I don't know. This guy is he's just gone crazy. He's just panicked, hasn't he? That's the thing. He's just panicked, and yeah, he needs some help, but he's also a complete jerk. Just from looking through the comments and OP's account, I think that OP lives in Germany, or at least is German. So safe to assume that this wedding was taking place in Germany, and that, yeah, her ex just fled across the border into France. It's not really that funny, but it kind of is. Like, I can just imagine this guy just being like so stressed and panicked and being like, you know what, I can't even just not go to my wedding. I've got to leave the country. What an idiot. What an absolute idiot. And like, just why is he stolen lipstick? Again, like, as I said earlier, I feel like this is a good man to dodge from I hope now his ex. But doing it in this way, absolutely shocking. Our friend's entitled sister tried to force her way onto our trip to Egypt. This story happened quite a few years ago with me and my friends. But after reading quite a few stories on this subreddit, I feel that now is a good time as any to share this post. On November 2019, me and a couple of my friends, Haley, Rose and Rachel, were given an opportunity to travel to the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Note that we are archaeology graduates. While our families and friends were excited and proud of us for being able to go on this trip, Rachel's family did not feel the same way. Rachel's younger sister, Lisa, was the golden child of her family. Anything she wanted, her parents gave to her. While Rachel had to take out a student loan to pay for college, Lisa's parents paid for her tuition, only for Lisa to drop out 2 years in. Instead, Lisa chose to try and build a career being a model and influencer on Instagram. When Rachel mentioned that she was going to Egypt with us, that our plane tickets and accommodation had been already taken care of for archaeological fieldwork, Lisa got jealous, as she felt that the trip and taking photos of herself in Egypt for Instagram would help launch her modeling career. That said, their parents demanded that Rachel give her tickets to Lisa, as they felt Lisa was more deserving of them. To which Rachel obviously said no, it was already paid for by the foundation specifically for her and our group, who were trained to do this kind of work. According to Rachel, she's had back and forth arguments with her family leading up to the trip. She actually eventually just left home and moved in with her boyfriend, now husband, into his apartment. I held on to our plane tickets as we were all to meet up at my dad's place in the morning before we head off to the airport. At the time, I still lived with my dad. That said, as me, Rachel, Haley and Rose were at my place just hanging out and getting ready, Lisa pulled up with her mum and came knocking on my door. Apparently, they were demanding one more time that Rachel give her ticket to Lisa. Lisa even had a couple of bags with her as well. Before I continue, I'll just give you a better understanding of Lisa and Rachel's family and why they may behave or think this way. Rachel is the only one in her family who has actually finished college. Rachel pretty much took care of herself for much of her childhood, as her parents were too fixated on Lisa. Their parents moved to Los Angeles from Florida to try and become actors, but failed. They moved up here for some reason, and now their dad works as a truck driver, and their mum, I think, works at a grocery store. Rachel's family treated formal education and academia in general as a joke, and they didn't really support the idea of anyone going to college until Lisa decided she wanted to try going herself, as previously mentioned. Hayley interjected, interrupting Lisa and her mum and pointing out again that this was not a vacation, this was an archaeological trip, and we were going there to do actual work. Hayley went on to point out that it's Rachel's name on the plane ticket and on our accommodation in Luxor. So she asked Lisa and her mum questions like, how do you think Lisa is going to actually get on the plane? Who will Lisa be traveling with in Egypt? And where will she be staying there? Apparently, Lisa, despite not being friends with us at all, and her mum, expected the rest of us, me, Hayley and Rose, to just somehow convince customs to let her through and get on the flight, as well as expecting us to look after her and accompany her. I should also note that apart from Rachel, nobody in her family has ever travelled on a plane before. Lisa and their mum have never been overseas, and the only international travelling their dad ever did was driving trucks to and from Mexico. That said, I'm guessing this is why they don't seem to know how plane tickets or customs work, but that's just my assumption. Well, that is a pretty fair assumption, although on the other hand, you could just say that they seem pretty dumb anyway, and may genuinely think that the name on your plane ticket doesn't matter and you can just get a ticket and use it whoever you are. I then pointed out to Lisa that if she really wants to go to Egypt, she could just buy her own tickets and book her own accommodation. However, Lisa said she didn't want to do any of that and she wanted Rachel's place on our trip, as she wanted all the expenses to be paid for and for us to accompany her, as she didn't want to travel by herself. Lisa and her mum eventually left after seeing that trying to argue and force her way onto our trip was not getting them anywhere, with the four of us, me, Hayley, Rachel and Rose, thankfully flying off to Egypt. After the dig at the Valley of the Kings, we did get to go and do touristy stuff, such as touring Cairo and seeing the pyramids of Giza. As for Lisa, while she still posts a lot on Instagram, she seems to have given up on a modelling and or influencer career. She's now just working in a warehouse. After the pandemic, she did get to go on vacation to Cancun though, but that is about it. Okay, and there we go. That is it for the first story of today's episode. And the one thing I will say is that I am at least happy that Lisa didn't manage to make it to Egypt and didn't manage to climb up the pyramids of Giza. In my mind, and I'm not sure why, actually I know why, it's because over the past few days I've seen at least like 2 or 3 videos of tourists scaling the pyramids. I thought Lisa might also do this. So at least she hasn't done that and defaced, you know, some of the most important landmarks there are in the world, or at least ruined them a little bit. But yeah, the audacity of both Lisa, but also just her mum, genuinely insane, is all I can say. Let's move on to the second story. My entitled sister thought she could make a living breeding pugs, and she let her kids live in the filth because of her dog hoarding. So to start this one off, OP has left an edit right at the top saying this: I'm already getting hate for this post, and believe me, I don't blame anyone for it. I was spineless back then. I wanted to call CPS or something, but anytime I even so much as mused about it, the family laid into me. So I focused more on helping to take care of the dogs and kids. But my sister's increasing toxicity only made it worse. And by the time I did take action, it was after my sister was finally evicted. I'm not asking anyone to see me as a hero here. I was a coward. But what I'm posting is 100% the truth. Okay, so there we go. Now let's get into the post. My sister for years believed she could make a living breeding pugs. She used to have a breeding pair she named after sibling characters, ironically. Well, that's a bit weird. The first time the female got pregnant, I had to help with the birth. And that pug had like 10 puppies. It was months of dealing with a stinky puppy pen, and my nephews and I having to take care of them while my sister wasn't home. She managed to find homes for all but one of the puppies, and the final one she refused to sell because he was too cute. I knew it. I knew from the start that she'd want to keep one of the puppies for herself. She denied it, but then she did. Just to try and make it look like she wasn't keeping the puppy because she didn't want to sell him, she claimed she was giving him to her sons and he'd be their dog. That was complete and utter BS, and we all knew it. That third pug was a menace, and it only made all 3 pugs one terrible group of troublemakers. They urinated on the floor so much, they rusted out the vents. And my nephews didn't really take care of the third pug, as my sister claimed they were supposed to, as their dog. So she threatened she'd give away the third pug many times, but didn't, and would cry if called out on it because he's too cute. After like 2 years of that, it finally was too much for her, and she gave the third pug away. She couldn't sell him like the prior puppies because he was fully grown and neutered. Somehow, the mother pug didn't have another pregnancy that took until my sister was evicted from the family property. We were kind of thankful for that. I ended up taking care of these pugs as much as my nephews while my sister wasn't home. The first pug that became the papa dog wasn't so bad, but the female that became the mama was a nightmare for a while. That dog developed some twisted need to poop exclusively on my sister's bed. My sister once came home to, I kid you not, 9 piles of poop from that one pug on her bed. I'd see this dog come running into the bedroom after going outside, jump on the bed, give you a look like she doesn't care what you think, and she would drop a juice wherever she felt like, which would usually be on the bed as soon as you weren't watching her. And this dog was punished for it many times, but refused to stop. It got to the point where we had to keep her caged and the bedroom door perpetually closed, but she kept finding a way in if she was let out of the cage. Now, just another quick edit here from OP. Avoid this and the next paragraph if you don't feel like reading about this dog. You know what I'll do? I'll put a timestamp on screen right now of where to jump to if you don't want to hear about what's going to happen next. And if you're listening on podcast platforms, just skip ahead. Eventually, it got to the point where I was taking zero BS from this dog. I decided one day she was not going to go back inside until she pooped. And the dog really did not like that, especially since it was cold outside and the ground was wet. I watched as she would sniff around, make a motion like she was going to take a dump, then just whine while looking around and move on. She did this a few times, then looked over at my sister's trailer and suddenly started running towards it all of a sudden with a look of complete glee on her face, like she was thinking, I want to poop there. I stopped the dog and I forced her to come back. She looked at me like I was a killjoy and just sat down to pout and stare at me. I told the dog I had all day, and she finally got bored enough to go back to sniffing around. She tried to make a break for the trailer 2 more times. Finally, after like 45 minutes, she couldn't hold it in anymore and took a dump. But I could tell she had more in her. So I kept waiting around and she finally took another dump because I wasn't taking her back to the trailer. The march back was like a walk of shame for her because she knew she'd lost. And she put up no fuss when I put her back in her cage. I kept up that routine until eventually she finally stopped trying to poop on the bed. Okay, I think we are done with the poop for now. So if you skip forward, you're safe. Eventually, my sister's at the time boyfriend brought home a puppy he got for free. This puppy was adorable, but grew into an absolute monster, bigger than my Akbash dog. He was huge and pooed and peed on the floor all the time, especially right near my middle nephew's bed. Okay, so the poop isn't really done yet. You know what? I think it's just part of this story, isn't it? It's kind of in the title. Anyway, when put on his tether outside, he would bark constantly. On days I had migraines, this dog drove me nuts, and he made it impossible for anyone to sleep at times, especially my father. This dog was so strong that he broke his chain tether numerous times. They couldn't use rope because he'd chew through it. He chewed everything. The 5th wheel trailer my sister was living in on our property at the time, she bought brand new. That dog just destroyed it, even worse than the pugs did. That dog also destroyed plenty of stuff belonging to my nephews. Clothes, shoes, toys, anything it could get in its mouth. I had to fix my middle nephew's shelves with duct tape. What? Your shelves? Goodness me. We told my sister many times that she had to get rid of this dog. We even gave her an ultimatum more than once, but she still refused. She finally sold the dog to someone who had one of the same breed and wanted another one, and treated us like we'd ruined her life by making her get rid of this dog that she could not handle. Soon after, my ex-brother-in-law took his kids away and refused to bring them back. Not long after, my sister was given the boot, and she was out by January. When my sister got an eviction notice from the family property in 2023, she moved in with her only remaining friend and started breeding her pugs again. And just like last time, she kept the cutest one. Then her best friend kicked her out, and my sister got a new boyfriend who was also her drug dealer and moved in with him. Then her abusive boyfriend kicked her out and left her in a broken down RV trailer on the side of the road. And then he left her with a car that barely ran. By then, she'd burned like 98% of the bridges she'd had because she's an entitled narcissist. She spent 2 days living with her boyfriend's sister and let her pugs pee and poop all over the bedroom floor and didn't clean up any of it. So she got kicked out there as well. I had to clean it all up when I came and got her and her stuff. And then I had to spend a day following her numerous places with all her stuff in the back of my truck while she was trying to find someone to take her in. Most of the people she tried to get in touch with wouldn't return her calls or messages. And I was the only one walking her dang dogs. She just sat in her car on her phone the entire time. And then she tried to force me to take her dogs home with me. But I couldn't. Our parents are my landlords. They said no. My sister flipped out on me for it. She claimed our parents were allowing me to bring her stuff home in my truck for the time being, and her dogs were a part of her stuff. But I still said no, and she lost her mind. She spent the night in a car full of junk with 3 pugs. She didn't even have food for the dogs. I had to buy her some because she was broke. The next day, our mum got her a motel room for the night and she was completely ungrateful for it. Then she went right back to her abusive boyfriend the next day. I just dumped her stuff off in his front yard. And I left. My sister finally had to surrender the mum and dad pugs to a rescue. But she kept that puppy. I'd previously told her she needed to give away all the dogs as she couldn't care for them if she was homeless. She said she'd think about giving up the 2 parent pugs, but refused to part with the puppy. I told her that trying to raise a puppy on the streets would not be good for the dog, and she ranted that dogs were great for the mental health of homeless people, and that she needed him. My sister was previously in touch with a pug rescue, but stopped talking to them. I looked this rescue up and I gave them a call, and they were worried for the safety of the pugs. So worried that they called me back to ask for or tell me updates on the situation. Eventually they called me and said my sister had surrendered the 2 parent dogs to them and they gave her $100 each for them. I don't know if that was a normal thing to do or if my sister maybe extorted money for the dogs since they were purebreds and a breeding pair. They didn't clarify. But both dogs were highly adoptable, they told me, and likely found homes fairly quickly, if not even maybe sent to the same home. My sister also had a tabby cat that she couldn't take care of and begged I take him. Not only did I take in the cat, I refused to return him to her later. He loves it here and he was raised here. When I brought him home, he started purring the second I pulled in the driveway, and I mean aggressively purring. He couldn't see where we were because he was in his carrier, but he knew by smell. As soon as I let him out of the carrier, he was running around the yard like, "I'm home." My sister previously took him to live in a drug den with her abusive boyfriend and would take him right back into that sort of life if I'd let her. I recently had him chipped and registered in my name just to keep her from taking him away. She's an animal hoarder. She'll keep dogs and cats and then just won't clean up after them. And if she has the money or the room, she'll get more. Over 20 years ago, she was living in an old manufactured home with 20 cats that she was letting pee and poop all over the place. I had to clean it all up for her many times because she wouldn't do anything. And when called out on it, she'd cry and say the cats were like her babies. I tell you, you don't know nothing about cleaning cat poop till you've had to use a shovel. Oh my god. Those cats were just pooping on top of more poop. It was like shoveling moist clay. At least I clean up after my cats. Recently, my sister showed up wanting her cat back and I kicked her off the property. She threatened to report me, but she hasn't. Probably because we know she's doing meth and crack and doesn't want cops snooping around. When she wasn't looking, I saw the cat run away from her and hide under my house. And normally he's friendly with everybody. Then he started following me and meowing like mad. He did not want to go with her. Okay, there we go. That is the end of that marathon story. I'm not quite sure how to react to that. Whether to feel like this woman is just completely ridiculous or I don't even know if she is entitled. I think she's just like mentally ill. Obviously loves animals, but in like a disgusting way that isn't for like the love of the animal itself. It's for how she feels and what animals can do for her. You know, she doesn't care if her animals are living in like manure. She just likes the way that it makes her feel having lots of animals around and lots of pets that she doesn't care for. Like, obviously she's got a lot of stuff going on. She does a lot of drugs, which is clear even despite the fact that we were told that she does a lot of drugs. And yeah, clearly she's not right mentally, but you know, despite all of that being said, you got to think of the animals here and how she's treating them. And the people in the comments below, and this is why OP left that edit at the beginning of this post saying, look, I know I'm getting a lot of hate in the comments. They've been saying, listen, you know that your sister is like this and she's a bad person, but you've sort of enabled this life. You've enabled her, not life, I suppose, but you've enabled her to have all these pets, and you haven't actually done anything. Like, you should have called CPS or, you know, the RSPCA in England a lot longer ago. It doesn't matter if your parents or your family are saying not to. Like, you know, you got to think about the animals here, not just your sister. I don't know. I feel a bit bad for OP. Like, you've tried so hard to help her, so you're clearly a nice person. Maybe you should have called CPS earlier, or the RSPCA, whatever you call it, the ASPCA, I think it is in America. So I don't know. What do you think in the comments down below? He should have done more, I think. But I mean, it is his sister, and clearly he wants to help. My wife returned from a work retreat with a hickey. She swears it's a bug bite, but I'm not convinced. I'm at a loss. How do I move forward? This was originally posted on February the 21st, 2025. I, a 27-year-old man, am in a fight with my wife, who is 28. We've had fights before, but not this bad. I'm at a loss on how to proceed. For context, we're college sweethearts, married for almost 6 years. We have a daughter who is 4. Our relationship was never perfect or without challenges. We've faced some family opposition with cultural differences, but we've made it work. She's my first love and my best friend. My wife works in corporate. Her job has annual work retreats that last for about a week. This year was in Vegas. I usually arrange my work schedule and tag along with her, and we make our own trip out of it. We couldn't this year. Our daughter gets major anxiety traveling long distances. We're working on it, but she wasn't budging, and we decided to choose our battles. So I stood behind and I held down the fort at home. The change of plans was a bummer because the trip was part of us reconnecting as both a couple and as a family. My wife's work hours have taken a toll, and her work-life balance leaves much to be desired. We entertain the idea of her skipping the retreat. Attendance is optional, but it's generally frowned upon if you don't, and my wife's making connections in her field. She grew increasingly weird. We have a system if either of us is away for extended periods. We keep in contact. For the first day or so, she was herself, but she grew distant. I'd even text her about important stuff and be left on read while she claimed she never saw my text. Whenever we talked, she was rushing me or our daughter off the phone. These were all times she wasn't involved in retreat activities. We were supposed to have a mini birthday celebration for our daughter over FaceTime. Our daughter was excited. It was something my wife promised her because the retreat overlapped her actual birthday. But she backed out because she had people up to her room after a seminar. It was like she wanted my permission to break her promise to our daughter. I told her I wasn't offering that, nor making her keep her word. She said I wasn't being fair, and this was a networking opportunity. They were business oriented and wouldn't understand her stepping away for family time. I said her decision is her decision, but she'd have to explain it to our daughter. She promised her that she'd rain check the following day. Our daughter didn't understand and cried. My wife ended up hanging up and leaving me to comfort our daughter alone. The whole incident rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like it. She didn't keep her word for the rain check either. She was documenting the retreat on social media. One co-worker, a 23-year-old man, was almost in every picture or video attached to her hip. In one pic, he had his arm too comfortably around her, IMO. He's a recent hire in my wife's department. She was asked to oversee him. I don't like the guy. He doesn't know boundaries. Once, in response to a work assignment, he texts my wife that she's exactly the kind of woman he needs to keep him in check. My wife brushed it off. She feels bad for him because he's not fitting in. She took him under her wing during his first retreat with the team. If I'd questioned, she'd say she was tired or networking. There was always something. But I've seen her at these retreats. This wasn't like her. She was just off. The day before her return home, she complained about a bruise on her neck. She stressed it was a bug bite. I didn't actually see the bruise until she came home. I instantly thought it was a full-on hickey. She kind of brushed it off after making a big deal of it over the phone. I didn't push because our daughter was present. But when I was able to confront her, she clung to her bug bite claim. When I kept pushing, she asked what I was trying to imply. I outright said I believed she had a hickey, and I didn't believe she was being honest with me. We had it out then. She was offended and angry at the accusation. Infidelity has always been a sore topic. Her family has a history of it. So we had a pretty bad fight, and she accused me of looking to pick a fight due to the incident with our daughter's birthday. I told her that had nothing to do with it, and everything to do with the hickey on her neck. The fight ended in an impasse. We're still not recovered. She swears it's a bug bite, but I'm not convinced. I've always trusted my wife. I never doubted her, but this bruise doesn't look like a bug bite, it looks like a hickey. I often feel more strongly when I consider how distant and weird she was during that Vegas retreat. Now she's wearing turtlenecks, and we're caught between arguing and her dousing our daughter and me with affection. Communication usually prevails for us, but not now. I think my accusation pushed us to a new level of argument. I'm at a loss here. I really need outside perspectives. How do I move forward? There we go. That is it for the original post. Before we get into the update, let's jump into some comments and see what the people of Reddit were saying. Somebody said, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I've never gotten a bug bite that looked like a hickey. Did she show you her phone or provide any proof that could support her innocence, or just dismiss you? The extra affection is a common move from guilt-ridden cheaters. Even if we stretch the imagination and believe it is a bug bite, she wasn't acting trustworthy, nor was she a good mother while they were in Vegas, and she needs to address and correct that. OP replied, no, I haven't had access to her phone. We usually have an open phone policy, but it's not something we've ever really done. I'm sure it will be another argument. Somebody else said, why did you go on work trips with her in the past? Did she want you to, or did you not want her to go alone? What is, and why is it necessary to have, the system when one of you is away? Whose idea was the FaceTime birthday celebration? Did she not talk to her daughter at all on her birthday, or she just couldn't do the FaceTime celebration? OP replied, work-life balance was an issue, so she'd invite me on the retreats. The system is for an extended period away from each other, like how long the retreat was, especially since we have a child now. The birthday FaceTime was my wife's idea. She promised our daughter and got her excited about it. No, she didn't talk with our daughter until she was calling to cancel. That's another reason the birthday stunt rubbed me the wrong way. Well, that, I've got to say guys, is actually terrible. Like, not chatting to your daughter at all on her birthday is so bad. I'm going to back my own parents up here. My parents never missed one of my birthdays ever. Like, they would make sure, even if there were work trips and stuff, they wouldn't go if it was on my birthday. So, first of all, respect to them. Actually, just last year, I think, was the first time that my dad wasn't there on my birthday, I believe. And I'm 26. So, you know, there's two ways of doing it. And by the way, I've been away on my birthday without my parents, but, you know, they want to be there, which is pretty nice. And it's definitely not like this mother. Anyway, OP then responded to a deleted comment saying, yeah, you don't get to disconnect from being a parent, especially to a minor, for extended holidays. You certainly don't ghost them on their birthday. And when you promise to do something special for them and got the child excited about it, and then just hang up on them while they're crying. To be honest, I don't even think the FaceTime is special at all, but there we go. I'm not insecure, OP says. My wife's gone on the retreats before. We both work outside the home and have the caring for our daughter, so it's not an imbalance. My wife's work-life balance is out of sorts. She's in the company of other adults plenty. I've been with my wife on these retreats and other social events. I know how she is. She was off this entire trip, and it wasn't appreciated her entertaining a co-worker who ignores boundaries and the fact that he had his arm wrapped around her waist like he was claiming her or something. I trusted her when she said she had a bug bite. I got things to help her treat it for when she returned. It was only after I saw the bruise in person that there was no mistaking it was a hickey for me, and I questioned her on it. Okay, then a week later, we got the following updates. Things are a roller coaster. I'm trying to process. It took a while for my wife and me to have any real conversation about the bruise on her neck. We were stuck between arguing and her showering our daughter and me with affection. I rarely saw the bruise because she was turtlenecked up, but I did note the healing process from reddish purple to yellow.
There wasn't any more discussion about the Vegas retreat. She made it clear she was done talking about it and that she shouldn't need to defend herself to her husband. I told her she could do whatever she wanted, but I was done being treated like an idiot and I wasn't sharing a bed with someone I couldn't trust. So I moved into the guest room. Communication stopped. The silences were palpable. Even our daughter noticed. I'm not proud of that. I try keeping her out of fights. My wife came to the guest room one night and asked if we could talk. I could tell she'd been crying. She said she hated the way things were between us. She felt she was losing me either way. I told her I needed complete honesty. She confessed that she hooked up with that co-worker on our daughter's birthday. The hickey was from him. She was lost in the heat of the moment and didn't realize he was sucking so hard on her neck. By her account, they made out while doing some on top of the clothes stuff, and then he went down on her. It stopped there because he called her by a nickname that I affectionately call her. It snapped her back to the reality of her actions. She went to splash water on her face and saw the hickey. The guy made light of it and made a joke about the hickey being her souvenir. She blew up on him and kicked him out of her suites. Part of the reason she was avoiding me was out of guilt. She said she's coming clean because she doesn't want to hide things anymore. I asked her why she cheated. What was it about that guy that she deemed worth risking everything? She claimed it wasn't him specifically, nor is she unhappy with our marriage. She doesn't really know how to explain it, but a part of her feels broken. The more she looks in the mirror, the more she sees her dad, who is 57. A cycle of being consumed with work, distant from his child, and the infidelity he put her mum, who is 55, through. She said her family never talked about anything openly, and how when she was growing up, her mum never addressed anything with her. I said her parents didn't make her cheat. She chose to party up with a guy who constantly disrespected our relationship. These were all her decisions, and she at any point could have chosen our family. She agreed. She wants to blame her parents, but realizes this is on her. She apologized for cheating and for entertaining the guy's advances. She said she'll do whatever it takes to repair. Go to HR, quit her job, counseling, anything. She wants to make everything right. I told her I don't know what right looks like or if that's possible for us anymore. I knew we had our problems, but I thought there wasn't anything we couldn't talk out. She insisted we still could talk it out. We didn't have to give up on us. She tried giving this rally cry for our relationship, but I felt very numb. I said I didn't recognize her. Not just the betrayal of our vows, but also how she treated our daughter. She's like a stranger. She feels she failed as a wife and mum, but she loves us both beyond words and wants our life together and our family intact. I told her I couldn't give her the answer she wanted and thought we needed to separate and reevaluate. She didn't want separation. She felt we should stay together in our home, but I told her a separation was happening. Either she was leaving the home or I was with our daughter. She consented to leaving so as to best not uproot our daughter so much. She asked for our daughter not to be taken away from her. My wife's staying with my in-laws. I know that's difficult in itself because she doesn't have the best relationship with her parents. One of the hardest parts is the shift for our daughter now. Right now, she believes her mum's just busy with work per usual. She hasn't questioned it too much. My mother-in-law called the other day. She made no excuses for my wife, but she's advocating for us to work through it. She told me times when she heard my wife describe me as the anchor she always wanted. She believes there's something worth fighting for if I'm open. Despite some family opposition we faced throughout our relationship, my mother-in-law was always a supporter of us. I'm even more at a loss. I never imagined this kind of betrayal from my wife. She was my safe place. I feel numb, yet broken. I'm in love with her. That hasn't changed, but I don't see myself, her, our relationship, or our family the same. Everything's more tense because it's fresh. I think this period of separation is for the best. I'm not sure about divorce. I haven't let myself fully go there. I'm not set either way. I don't know where things go from here, but I'm focusing on our daughter and taking things one step at a time. I feel that's all I can do right now. Thanks again to everyone for the support. It is much appreciated. Okay, and there we go. Let's jump in to some comments before I give my final thoughts. Somebody said it was already established that there had been line crossing with the co-worker prior to the trip, even if it wasn't physical yet. But even if there hadn't been, I've known co-workers' pet names for their significant others before when only interacting with them on a professional level. The fact that the guy both intentionally gave her a hickey and used the pet name says a whole heck of a lot about him though. Someone willing to engage in an affair is bad enough. This guy was doing it as some kind of sick power play. I mean, that's a great point. He is 23 as well, so he's probably very immature, and I can definitely see how someone like that is, doing it for their own ego, to be like, oh, I did this. He's probably like gone and told all his mates how he broke up a relationship with an older woman, you know. Some people like that do exist. Now, somebody replied to this saying, it is also possible that it's something super common, like honey or baby, but OP said no, it's actually a specific nickname. It's not derived from her name or anything. It just summed up things I loved about her in one word. Apparently, he turned it into a sexual context. I mean, I don't want to get too far away from the real villain of the story, who is your wife, but this guy is awful. Somebody else said, one question, how close was the colleague to her to know her nickname that you use, and why did she let him this close to her literally and figuratively? Opie said, at the time I knew they had a friendship. She was asked to mentor him as he joined her department, so she took him under the wing and was supposed to be showing him the ropes. They would text and stuff and he would cross boundaries. His texts increasingly read like a guy fishing for an opportunity though. My wife shut the idea down as not even a factor for her, and I chose to trust her because I never had a reason to doubt her before. As far as the nickname, it was something only I called her, but it wasn't like a secret thing. I called her by it in front of others and our daughter. She claims the guy overheard me say it when she had me on speaker once, and he asked her about it afterwards. Okay, so I guess that leads us into a final question for OP, which ultimately has to be, do you see yourself, or do you want to get back with your wife or not? And it's a very, very tough one, but I have quite strong opinions on this just based on what I've read. Now, if she had just gone on this retreat and maybe she liked the look of this guy, and on one night she made a huge error, did what they did, and then immediately came to you and your daughter, well, maybe not your daughter, but you know what I mean, came to you and said, I can't believe it, I've done this, I'm so sorry, this is the worst thing I've ever done, etc, 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 told you everything, was completely honest about it, came home from the trip, whatever. I think then and only then could there have been any potential for you to forgive her if you wanted to. I'm not saying you should, by the way. I'm saying that only under those circumstances would, in my opinion, you be able to potentially forgive her. However, the fact of the matter is that she lied to you for who knows how long. A while, right? Like, she said the hickey was a bug bite. She was just avoiding you the entire trip, not just in that one moment, or that one day. The fact that she didn't speak to your daughter on her birthday because she was like just going after this guy. The fact that this has been a thing before, which you've obviously talked about, the guy being close to her, or trying to get with her clearly, and her not actually, well, I suppose either she didn't understand it or was just a bit naive to what he was doing, or she actually knew what he was doing and was like, oh, don't worry, it's fine. Whereas in reality, she was probably actively encouraging it. All these things and more add up, and therefore I can say with all that context, then I don't see how you can ever get back with her, because it wasn't just the one moment of madness, cheating. It was all the lying and deceit and everything else on top of that. So for me, I think this relationship is sadly done. I don't know how you could ever trust someone like this again. To be honest, I think it'd be very hard to, even if they did just cheat and then immediately apologize, and the cheating was the only thing, but all this as well, I think it's going to be impossible. But hey, I'm not in love with this woman anyway. So there you go. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below.